Michael, we are live, and whenever you begin, folks, staff will take down the graphic.
Great, awesome, thank you. All right, everybody, welcome to our October 17th, 2023 full design review board meeting. I want to call us to order. I do have a quorum. Staff, tell me how many do I have out of my 9? Do I have 6 or 7?
You have
Can't
6.
I have 6. Okay, I have a 6 out of 9 for quorum. And I don't have any opening remarks, so I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Now I'm looking for, or I'm going to approve any last meeting minutes. Staff, do we have some meeting minutes we need to approve?
Yes, we have the September 19th, September 26th, October 3rd, and October 10th meeting minutes.
Do I hear a motion to approve September 19th, September 26th, October 3rd, and October 10th meeting minutes?
So moved.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion passes. All right, now I'm looking for any general member comments that do not pertain to any applications tonight. This is a public meeting. Any general comments? All right. Without further ado, then we'll get jumped into application F on my agenda, which is 2214 Wake Robin Lane. Is the applicant here?
The applicant is here, and we are asking her to unmute. Lisa, you're unmuted. We can't hear you. No, we can't hear you. She just needs a second. We still are unable to hear you. Would you like to, she's going to try to dial in. Give me one moment.
Okay.
Lisa, can you unmute yourself by pressing *6? Doesn't seem to be working at this moment. I can try to call her, or did you want to defer while we work out the logistics of our audio?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
All right, do I hear, I'm gonna make a motion to amend tonight's agenda to move application F to the end of the agenda and move on to application G. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we'll move on to application G, which is 11229 Leatherwood Drive.
I believe I've identified the applicant. I'm requesting that they unmute now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. If you could speak up a little bit, that would be great.
Yes. This is Sean Mayer.
Hello, if you could walk us through it. I know you guys were here before, and I think you came back with some more information for us that we kind of asked for. So if you could walk us through what the updated plan is, and then we will see if there's any questions for you, okay?
Yes, sure. Regarding the fence, I accepted the tree level with the wiring that the other neighbors has that you offered me. For the landscape and driveway, I changed it to the offer for the 18-inch gravel, and I removed one of the patio, existing patio, and wants to do the driveway wider so that we can park and then turn around because it's a long driveway and it's steep. I changed that one. For the landscape plan, I hired a landscape designer, Meadow Farms, and they created a plan that I submitted for the plan to accept. They did it, the full plan, and I paid, and that's the last, October is the last month that the trees, they can be planted.
Okay.
And the landscape design, they had a two walls adding to avoid the soil washing down to the area that right now it is full of debris.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all. That was is something I have changed it, updated as last time you mentioned, and I changed it to that one. For the fence, I have set back 8 feet on the neighbor, which we have problems since 11 months, and they put a 6 feet the privacy fence as she did it the whole area with her neighbors. And adding a shed next to the shed from the neighbor, which you can see the picture and the color, it is matching the building itself.
Okay.
Yeah, that is all changes.
Great. Staff, is there, I think there's an affected party or two for this one.
Yes, we have several affected parties. And if we can go to page 15, we can start with the first affected party.
So just as a reminder for affected parties, you have 3 minutes to state your affected party. So we obviously do have your statements as well, but please respect the time of 3 minutes. Thank you.
The first affected party on screen has been requested to unmute.
Yep, is that me? Eurus Kelly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'll try to move pretty quickly. So a couple of things. I live directly across the cul-de-sac of the property. Number one, I read your guys' guidelines, and it very clearly states that, you're supposed to keep the natural areas natural. I can now see 2 houses that I never saw in my life before from the cul-de-sac. That's how much, trees and shrubbery has been taken down. It looks totally different than it has ever had since I've lived here for, 27 years or something. So clearly the party is flaunting. That's the only word I can use, nicest word I could use, flaunting the regulations and trying to get away with it. That needs to not happen. You can't just cut everything down and get away with it. Very, very importantly, and I'm moving fast, I know that, is the stability of the hill. That hill and that area has flooded before, even when there was a lot of vegetation there. So, who's going to be around in a couple of years when someone downstream from there, downhill, their house gets flooded? Kathy hired someone to take a look at it. He already sees erosion and soil movement. That is backed up, not only hitting houses, but it's also hit the road. That's how it affects me. So I can't get out of Leatherwood Drive when it's flooded. So I'm extremely, extremely concerned about that. Besides the absolute flagrant, disregard for any of the requirements. And there's just a lot of other things. What I see here is he wants to add a bunch of things. Well, let's fix the problems that he caused before we talk about adding things. I also question with adding all that cement and the shed, how is that going to affect the water absorption of that property? I know years ago my neighbor behind me did a addition, and you guys and the county were all over that because it affected in a very significant way the water absorption, and they did a bunch of calculations and all that. So I haven't done the math on this, but I kind of question because it's a pretty small lot, and I think there are county regs that you got to follow with that, but you guys are the experts, I'm not. So that's the big thing is, just getting away with destroying a bunch of things. My views are completely different than they were earlier in the year. I can see 2 houses I never saw before. That's how bad the cutting of everything is. And of course, it doesn't directly affect me, but the houses downstream, are they going to get flooded again? With all this vegetation removal on that hill and those kinds of things. And then there's just a bunch of other things. Let's stop talking about adding things until we fix the problems that have currently been caused, and also do an analysis of the water absorption through the thing. And on top of all that, there are now 3 colors on the house as opposed to 2. If you
Pardon me, Mr. Kelly.
Okay.
That is fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Let me see.
May I talk right now?
I'm sorry. The next person that we had was Patricia Rudder. Is this Miss Patricia Rudder?
No, that's still the applicant.
Give me one moment, sir. Let's go through the affected parties, and then we'll the DRB will come back to you.
So
Okay, sure.
Patricia is being unmuted now. Patricia, could you please speak once you're?
Can you hear?
Yes, ma'am. I'm
Hello.
sorry.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I echo Eurus's concerns. I am the direct neighbor next door. I'm concerned about the shed. I do have a shed there, but I don't know if he's proposing that cement, the cement underneath the shed. But his property is a little bit higher than mine. And I too am very concerned about runoff directly into my property, since all the privacy, all the trees, everything has been taken away. So I have the same concerns that yours, but even more because I am directly affected next door. And his fence, I don't know where exactly. I have an existing fence, and I think he is proposing putting it right next to mine. And I don't know if there's any guidelines. Does it have to be a certain, like, can it be buttoned up right next to mine, or is there a requirement for it to be some distance apart? And then as far as all the trees that he's replanting, I think I use the words trees with quotes, because it looks like there's a lot of them that are just kind of bushes. And it's not clear what caliper they are. I know that there should be design review requirements that trees be a certain caliper, that to replace them. So it doesn't look like from the trees that he's proposing, there's going to be much privacy restored at all to the whole area between our properties. So I think those are my main concerns, but certainly the runoff with all the cement that he's proposing and the patios, I'm very concerned about runoff onto my property and onto Leatherwood Drive.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next we have Lois. Lois didn't submit an updated affected party statement, but if you would like to speak, if you can go to page 26.
Oh, that's Lou.
I don't believe.
I was not able to identify this affected party prior to the meeting start. If they're present, they can use the icon hand raised through Zoom to identify themselves. Or if they've dialed in, they could unmute themselves.
I don't think he's on.
All right, then we can move on to Kathy Kaplan.
Kathy, I've sent a request for you to unmute yourself. Please let me know when you're unmuted.
I'm unmuted.
Awesome. Your time starts now.
Okay. I would like the DRB to address the covenants violation with tree removal and understory removal. I would like the woodland behind my house restored. The plans he have they do not address restoring the woodland. I would like something done with the berm along Leatherwood Drive. I do not want a fence behind me, and I definitely don't want a privacy fence. This is a crazy, crazy thing that he's proposing. He can't connect it to the existing privacy fence because there's a very large oak tree, and then there's a space of my property, which I will not allow him to build a fence on my property. I want you to address the erosion on the property, because I don't think anything he's done will actually address the erosion, the original problem from up here at the level above his driveway. And also additional cement around his house is going to put more water going down that steep embankment, which we know already from the erosion expert, where there are likely to be problems there. So yeah, I would like him to replace the trees that he took down. And to my count, it's closer to 50 to 60 trees, 34 trees and saplings just in this space along Leatherwood Drive, where I counted cut trees and cut saplings. So that was a lot. And his crew came down maybe a month ago, 5 weeks ago, and they weed whacked the whole side where it had started to grow back a little bit. And they weed whacked a bunch of it out, so that whatever gain that area made over the summer was lost. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And RA is also here as an affected party.
All right. Who's speaking?
Hello.
on that?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Are we good to go?
Yes,
You
we
are.
Okay. It's Cam Adams for Resident Association on behalf of the Board of Directors for Resident Association. I just wanted to share and kind of reiterate some of the points that some of the other affected parties made. There's still concerns related to the hardscape surrounding the entire exterior of the house. I understand the materials have been changed, but we are wondering if there are some alternative designs or considerations that the applicant has made prior to looking at gravel, as there's still some concerns related to that amount of hardscape around the exterior. The shed location is of a concern in terms of the design guidelines. There also was a question related to the height, the peak of the shed, and whether it met the requirements for Fairfax County in terms of the accessory dwelling requirements for sheds on a single family property, either on the side or rear. This property is kind of a corner lot since it's on a cul-de-sac, so there are some concerns related to that. And then, of course, the planting plan. We appreciate the homeowner providing the additional planting plan, but we are unsure if the recommended planting is adequate for the total amount of removal that was cited during a covenants inspection hearing. Lastly, the fence. This is a comment to the design review board relative to privacy fencing. There are certain requirements that the DRB has consistently upheld in terms of privacy screening. And this property does not meet that requirement in terms of the location of the privacy fence that is being proposed. So that should be considered in review of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, Steph?
No one else.
Okay. So if you guys could unmute the applicant, I'm gonna go around and see if anyone has any questions for him. And then we'll go from there. So, John, did you have any questions for the applicant?
No.
Mike, did you have any questions for the applicant?
Question for you. I mean, the characterization of clear cutting the hillside, I mean, is that factual? I mean, the photos I saw in there indicated to me that that's really been laid bare. So is that accurate?
Hello,
Yep.
can
Are
you
you
hear
there?
me? Actually, the erosion was dismissed by the Fairfax County and Association. And I cut it only 3 trees, not whole trees. That they are asking me for all the property. And I am replacing from the designer with a 15 trees, not shrubs. It's a 15 actual trees. They are putting a caliber 3 inches, which they are putting. The outside, what you're showing right now, that was all the falling trees. That was only about 1 inch, 2 inch, or up to 2 feet above the ground. Was filled with the leaves. They removed the leaves and cut that one that they grow the other area. And the Fairfax County, they said that is fine. You could cut other trees that is tall and is dry. I said, no, I am not doing that. That is from Fairfax County. After 6 months, if I am mowing my lawn, shouldn't affect the neighbors. Because I am not living there, it is right now very difficult with a small, narrow driveway, and my wife is a little bit overweight. They cannot look on the back. 2 or 3 times she's back up because it's deep area. They fell with the car on the side, left and right. I am not making too much concrete. It is all existing one. I had a patio, existing patio, and the back is existing patio.
Okay. Yep.
And
Hey, sir,
what
I'm not.
I am
Yep, I'm not interested right now in that, right? I was asking you specifically about the tree removals on that slope. So if we could go back a slide, that'd be swell. So you just said a significantly dissimilar number from what some of the affected, there you go. I mean, the numbers don't add up, right? I mean, that's a significant number of removals that something is different, right? Something don't make sense here. I can tell you that obviously erosion as water runs across that is going to continue because there is no vegetative cover there, right? It is going to continue to get worse over time. So, I mean, looks like you removed more than a couple trees.
No, that is, we didn't remove these trees.
Okay, so
I don't
who
know
operated a
why-
chainsaw?
What claiming they cut it. This is existing tree. If you have old pictures, you can see it. We didn't remove any trees, but by association came over there. They said it's 15 trees removed, and I paid $11,000 to the designer for the trees that they're gonna replant and they're gonna grow. I can show you. It is about 5-6 houses. They don't have not one tree in the yard.
Yeah,
I
but
can
again,
bring the
I'm not
picture
interested
for
in
you.
those other houses, right? We're talking about your parcel and how it affects the
That,
adjacent properties.
for my neighbors, they have also no trees. On the back, they cut about 15 inches tree, and they didn't replace with anyone. All the backyard, it is tree of tree. They don't have a tree, my neighbors.
Okay.
I am
All right.
also affected from them that they remove, but nobody tell them. Now, since 11 months, I'm going to move in, and I am paying 2 mortgages. I am retired, and now every time I am following the direction, I am accepting what they are saying. I am going and getting a designer, and I am putting in. A lady that said, I don't want to have a fence, she had the entire line of the border with a neighbor, with a Kelly, the privacy fence. She is cutting tree and she has a privacy fence, and I have to start living in that house after 11 months to finish it.
Okay. All right, Michael, I don't have anything else at this point.
Okay. Elena, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Jim, did you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Brian, did you have any questions?
I guess I just wanted maybe a little bit more detail on I don't know if they're retaining walls in the backyard, the front yard. I'm not even sure which way is front, opposite Leatherwood Drive. It looked, I think you call it, they're gonna be cinder block walls. Can you tell me a little bit more about those walls?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
existing walls. The first one is existing. The first wall, the long one, this is existing. Last time, the neighbor said because of the erosion, which was dismissed, and it is no water coming down. The hard rain that is coming, it is coming on the driveway. This driveway had, since that house was built, they have a slope. And any water on that one is going to come to the street. It is not that we are causing it. That is the driveway. It is going down and then is making same as the cavity in the ground and coming to the cul-de-sac. It is not by cutting the trees causing this one. On the back of the house where these two walls is, that was only bushes, dead bushes. And then if they clean up, that was just soil, and there was no erosion. We didn't damage the ground that is caused the erosion. The neighbors, they are making everything multiplied by 100 and 200, which is not. This house was 25 years that was not cleaned up. I have a pictures that they had all the type of the trash in the yard. After we remove the yard, it is right now visible. Everything is, I'm doing this wall, it is existing. This wall is existing. Only I did the back one. If they don't want to have it, last meeting, they said they need a one wall that is stop the soil. I am paying from my hard money, from my saving, to put a second wall that the neighbor said, okay, that is fine. But
Okay, so the
every
second
time
wall
I
we're
am
seeing on the right
taking
here
this-
that's got a curve to it is new, is proposed to be new.
this is a
The
new,
one on the
yes,
left
this
is
a
existing.
new,
Okay, can you
Yeah.
tell me about the new wall? The materials, am I?
the new wall, the new wall setting back, that if the soil is gonna come to the house, they can stop that area. And we're gonna plant. You see, the designer put a lot of trees, and then we're gonna add a lot of bushes that avoid anything is gonna happen over there.
Yeah, Brian, to answer your question, my understanding is that it's a CMU wall of construction, but faced in flagstone, like a fieldstone veneer, basically.
All the way around on all
It's-
sides.
With a cap.
Yeah, facing a stone, yes.
Yeah,
How
if you
tall
look
is
on, if you look on slide 3, Brian, it has a
Uh-huh.
description. It says the cinder block space will be stone and top of the wall will be flagstone, 100
correct.
linear feet and 40 linear feet parallel. So my understanding is it's going to be completely covered in stone, and then there'll be a flagstone cap.
That's correct.
Any other questions, Brian?
Not right now.
Okay. Emily, I saw that you joined. I'm
I
glad.
did, and apologies for the technical difficulties on my end. Yes, I think we were wondering, how tall is this wall? I don't see any kind of elevation, top of wall, bottom of wall. What is the proposed height of the new wall in the back?
From the back is not visible, from the face it is 24 inches.
From the face, it's 24 inches. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know, I mean, with all of the trees that have been removed on site already, one of my concerns would be the footer for that wall, going through the critical root zones, and the construction access of any other trees on site. So even if we were to approve this wall installation, because of the amount of trees that have already been lost, I'd almost want to see a tree protection plan to make sure that we're not going to be causing further damage to construct this wall and get into the backyard. Is there a full map of the existing trees left on site? Have we had a survey done?
This is only one or two small trees, mostly was dead bushes. There was no trees that area, but still on the landscape plan from the designer, we are putting plum, thunder, purple, dogwood, stellar, pink, witch, hazel, and we are putting a lot of plants to that area. If the wall that last time somebody requested has to be another wall to avoid the soil moving, I did that wall, adding, it is costing me, but if you think that second wall, the new wall shouldn't be exist, I can avoid it. I am saving money. But last time, by the last meeting, they requested that has to be another wall to stop the soil moving.
No, I agree that helping for water diversion and preventing soil from eroding and retaining would be good. I just want to make sure that we're not doing any further damage to any of the large trees on site during the course of construction, because the loss.
Not at all. Not at all. I am not moving any trees, not removing, not just planting more bushes make it
Well,
more nicer.
the issue, sir, is bringing heavy equipment in over and over again in these trees critical root zone will ultimately lead to damage and death down the road. And that's just because there's already been so much loss on the property of coverage. I'd hate to see more mature trees get lost. And I would really love to see a survey that, you know, of this property that shows the canopy, the grades. I mean, there's a topo map, but it's not really anything. I don't really have any questions per se, other than like, I just don't feel like there's enough information on this application.
This wall, it is 24 inches. It is made by three of the guy. They are doing the landscaping. It is no heavy machine. They can make it. We are not pouring the concrete. We are just doing the cinder block by 2 men. And walking 2 men with a cinder block in the hand, it is not damaging the trees or doing anything wrong to the landscape.
Well, sir, if you don't have a footer and you install a cinder block wall, it's not going to be there for very long. So there has to be some form of construction in there. I mean, if you're just doing a dry stack wall, that doesn't sound like what you had proposed in your notes. So
the wall is existing from previous owner. It is algae on it. It is so old that one of your guys, they can come over there, and I think they had a picture as they came to control the tree removals. They have a picture. This is existing. Also, in my driveway, it is a 6-foot wall that the soil came down in that one. That area, the cul-de-sac of the driveway, it is a 6 feet tall wall that was meant for the garage. But I don't know why it's still the bolt, everything from the old garage is there. It is existing since maybe 25, 30 years.
Michael, I don't have any further questions at this time.
Okay. The only question I have is, why are we running a split rail fence right next to another split rail fence? Why are we connecting them?
The fence from the neighbor, they did at 40 feet at the front, just there's a square next to her shed, because she has a shed, she had a fence, and the fence was for the dog. That is only a square area in her land. To the dog goes over there. You can see it. The line goes in. That is for that one. It is not the actual fence.
Okay, because from what my understanding is from the drawing here, it looks like you're going to run the fence parallel to her fence for about, I don't know, 25 feet, 30 feet, let's say, on the very front left edge of your property. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, the green, it is my property line.
Mm-hmm.
And the next bit, it is my fence. I'm going to put it in. Then at the end, 8 feet from the neighbors, which she did about 6 feet privacy, entire border. Yes, I'm sitting back for 8 feet and then go over there and sit on the back for 8 feet to put a same fence that she did for the neighbor. That I am, because she's always making problems since I bought this property. And I asked her why you are removing the trees and not putting in. They said, yeah, the tree was splitted. I removed it. That is a gigantic tree next to my yard. And I said, why you are putting 6 feet privacy entire your border, and I am not allowed to put 4 feet fence that you can see through it.
Okay.
I think they are making rules and regulation beside the association and Fairfax County. And if they are allowing to do it, if they are allowing to have a shed, if they are allowing to put a fence, why I am coming as a new neighbor, and now since 11 months they are pushing me left and right, and I cannot come and live in the house that I purchased. And I'm paying two mortgages right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. We're going to have some discussion and then we'll come back to you if we have any other questions. Okay.
Yes.
Staff, one question I have is for 11223 Leatherwood Drive. Do we know why they have a privacy fence? Do they have a pool or anything? Why do they have a privacy fence and then we have other split rails in the neighborhood?
I do not have an answer for that.
Okay.
I can look up to see if they had a prior approval. One moment.
What was that? Yeah, I only wonder because it's it is a wooded area, so I'm just unique why there is a there's no specific. I mean, usually our guideline would only approve a fence like that if there was some specific reason. So I just was curious because before we approve an extension of it, I want to make sure that it's actually an approved fence would be the first question. I think here, guys, I think the best way to look at this is we have basically there's like almost 4 separate applications, and I kind of want to take it one by one. I think on the landscaping situation, I think they have a lot of replants happening. I can't exactly formulate whether it's enough because I don't know what's existing. I can't tell what's there to decide whether what they're putting back is adequate. Is it not? I know there was also the whole concern of that hill is actually not even their property, that the hill is actually owned by VDOT. If I remember this correctly, there was a whole VDOT report kind of referenced in the original application. I think the outcome of talking was that we can't require them to plant back onto property that's not theirs, because unfortunately, that's between them and VDOT, not us. But we can, I think, help recreate the natural wooded area that was taken out. At the end of the day, it may have been a lot of understory trees that were taken out, but that doesn't excuse the fact that it was a natural wooded area, and it's been a natural wooded area, and there is undergrowth, and there are little plants that live in a natural wood area. They're not all big giant trees. So just because you're not taking down big giant trees doesn't mean you're not impacting a natural wooded area, which I think is what is the concern here. Most of Leatherwood Drive is kind of this natural wooded area. So that's the kind of first application I think we need to address. I think personally, we don't have enough information to make a ruling one way or the other. So for that one, I'm thinking we defer it to allow them to provide more information and more detail on the existing landscaping. The fence, I don't fully understand what's going on out there. So I want to have a little bit more direction from staff on what fences have been approved. What do we have approvals on? What sheds do we have approvals on? Because even the existing shed that he's saying is there from the neighbor doesn't technically meet our guidelines either because it's quite close to the property line. Usually we require 20-foot setback. I'm confused at why that one is there also. And I think that's on 11225 Leatherwood Drive. So staff, if you guys could note that and kind of look into, they have like the smaller fence area and the shed. So if you guys could kind of, because the reason why I'm looking into these is because he's claiming that these things exist. And so I'm just doing the same thing. And that's why I want to make sure that what exists is actually approved, and then what stipulations or why we approved certain things, back in time. And overall, I think we just need better pictures of the site. I'm so confused at where we are half the time in the project. I'm looking at the drawing. The site plan isn't fully on the same page. It's very confusing. The current asphalt driveway, I think, is being proposed to be switched all the way to concrete, which I don't know why. If he is worried about cost, concrete is not cheaper than asphalt. So staff or Cam, you got a question?
I just had a comment. We did find that the privacy screening at 11 223 was approved, and it was as a result of the removal of 11225, removing 21 trees. The DRB approved a privacy screen in replacement of what was there. So the privacy screen was approved in 2006.
Okay, well, that's pretty ironic.
And the owners of the property are the same. So 11225 and 11223 are the same owners as they currently are.
Okay. Oh, brother. All right. So I guess I out of all the things, the gravel it doesn't bother me. If he wants to do the 18 inches of gravel, it's 12 inches deep. It will probably help some of the water drainage around the property. It's not visually going to affect me that much. I think overall, that's probably the one thing, I'd be willing to I recommended River Rock. Gravel necessarily isn't River Rock, but, from a cost standpoint, I can understand it's probably a little less expensive. I'm not going to.
And it is an improvement from, I think the previous application had it as a 5-foot concrete pad.
Yeah, it was like 5
so
foot
it is an
sidewalk.
improvement. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for that portion, I'm fine with it. I mean, unless somebody else has a big objection to it,
I mean, what they're showing here is, I think a slightly deceptive. The plan that shows where this is going to be is stating it's going to be number 57s, which is basically driveway gravel. It's, an inch and a half. And I don't think that that's fitting for around the foundation of a home. I mean, if it was buried and it was there for drainage, that would be great. And maybe they can put 12-inch, you put 11 inches of number 57 and then do a topping of decorative river rock in order to kind of have the best of both worlds. The 57 is great for drainage, but it is very utilitarian and very much a driveway gravel. And I don't think it's in keeping with our material palette here in Reston.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I do think that's a great idea. I didn't even think about, you could do, a different sub base and then put the decorative gravel on top, which costs a little bit more, but it's going to be, visually much more appealing with the innate. The thing is, we want to make this look back like a natural area, which is in line with our guidelines. So, I think overall, we really, I hate to just keep kicking the can down the road, but I feel like we just need an overall cohesive plan that's to scale, documenting clearer what's existing, what's going to be proposed as new. Unfortunately, the existing trees that were taken down are gone. We have records somewhat of what was there. However, I don't need that all documented. I just need a updated plan that shows all the existing trees, so then we can combine it. So, Elena, you have a question?
Just a comment. I find it very difficult to be switching back and forth with the various plans. I think we need a comprehensive plan. Contour, showing the contour around the new wall. It's, it's to scale relationship to the old wall. It looks to me like they're trying to do some kind of terracing, but I'm not sure. And the exact location of the proposed shed and the trees, etc. Everything, so we can look at it comprehensively.
Yeah,
that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I agree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a motion to defer the application, requiring a more comprehensive and clear landscaping, grading site plan of what's existing, what's proposed, all on one drawing. That's all on one sheet that we can look at, and that fully depicts everything that you're proposing, and with recommendations to follow certain guidelines that we have with, we don't allow parallel fencing, parallel runs of fencing. We don't recommend having dissimilar materials between concrete and asphalt for a driveway. It needs to be a complete replaceable if you are going to switch from asphalt to concrete, as an example. The stone we recommend to be, use the 57A as a sub base, but then put a more decorative river rock on the top layer. Those are kind of recommendations to go along with. I think overall the stone wall design is fine. I just think depicting where it is and what is it holding back in the height, putting it all in the application, I think is critical. So that's why I'm motioning to defer, just for more information and for the applicant to provide that information.
I'll second that motion with the caveat that the landscaping plan, I'd really like to see an emphasis on native understory trees that would be fitting in this environment. I'm looking at a lot of the plantings proposed, and one, they're for full sun, which this site is not. So even if we plant them, they're not going to survive. And two, there are a lot of non-native species that aren't really going to be doing a lot to reestablish the habitat that was removed. So I would like to second that with the caveat that the new landscaping plan include plantings that will help restore habitat and be proper understory trees for Reston.
One comment before the motion is completed. There's an active violation, so could the DRB add a return date?
Timeline. Yeah, I think let's give another 60 days to get the plan in. And staff, can you send some examples of landscaping plans just so he understands what we're looking for when we ask for like kind of this site plan, landscaping, tree plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the motion for the whole application? Or are we just talking about landscaping?
No, I'm deferring everything because I think it's all a cohesive application.
But I wonder,
what are you thinking otherwise?
I just wonder if there's anything in here we could provide a little more clear direction on. For example, like maybe even the shed or the proposed concrete driveway. I mean, I think that we've heard some from the affected parties about the increased impervious area and things like that. And so, I mean, I don't know if I would be in favor of that at all. That this increase, this kind of large increase in the impervious area on the site, considering how many trees were cut down and things like that. So, I mean, I just wonder if there's anything that we could tackle tonight like that we might have consensus on.
Like you're not liking that parking pad portion.
I don't think so. I really think it's massive, first of all. And I think that, I mean, I don't know, I might be wrong, but the driveway, I mean, it's very long. It's quite a lot of area. And so I am worried about this additional area that I'm not sure is necessary. And I'm also concerned about it just because of how many questions we have with the way the site has been cleared. I just don't think it's appropriate.
What I would do is maybe with the motion, maybe recommend a revised driveway design that lessens the impact. There are lots of ways to do a driveway these days that's not just concrete or not just asphalt. We can, there might be a pervious paver parking pad or something that might be integrated a little nicer into the landscaping, and the water can go through it, as an example. So
no, that's a great idea. Yes.
I will accept that kind of those two amendments to my motion to have additional feedback for the applicant. Any other comments, thoughts?
One more is just, I would really like to see, other than just trees on the landscaping plan, something to help restore and stabilize the soil in the understory areas on those steep hillsides, whether that be some kind of erosion control matting, a planting. But to be frank, it's mud waiting to slide down a hill. It's an erosion nightmare. So I would like to include that as part of the landscaping plan, to see a revegetation of the scoured hillsides, to make sure that those slopes are stabilized.
Okay. I will accept that as well. So staff, it's kind of a deferral with recommended amendments to their plan. So we have a motion, a second, some amendments. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes.
Michael, can I make a comment on
Yep.
still on that case where we leave? I just think I shared the confusion that I think was going across the board as well. I wonder if we should set up a site visit. If there's a way to do that officially or whatever, so that we can go see, because I agree. I cannot tell, especially regarding the fences, what's there now, what's being proposed. So, or if that just needs to stay informal, but just a thought that it might benefit us all.
Yeah, I mean, staff, if you can ask if that's acceptable by the applicant, or we just need a lot more pictures that are labeled of what we're looking at. Because there's no clear existing pictures on the property, what's going on. Like, there's not a single picture of that existing retaining wall. I don't even know what it looks like. So, just as an example, that's kind of a clear. So if you guys could follow up and see if we can do a look and see, or whether we need to just get a lot more documented photos, that would be helpful.
Yes. Will do.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to application H, Purple Sage Cluster. You guys are putting in some new lights.
Unmuting the applicant now.
Is the applicant here for Purple Sage?
Yes.
All right, if you could walk us through your guys' light pole replacement plan.
Yes, good evening. So you've seen this, an iteration of this proposal before. We've updated it over the last year. The plan is to remove the existing lights and bases. About a month and a half ago, one of the lights did fall. So as a safety measure, we removed most or all of the lights with wooden posts. So we only have 3 lights in place right now that have metal posts. Those are not in operation. But the plan will be to, excuse me, replace the 25 existing lights and then add 8 additional lights. We've been in discussion with Dominion to have them install the lights and the necessary equipment. Yeah, I guess that's the big overview.
So it looks like you guys are switching. It looks like you're switching from a shoebox fixture to kind of this cutoff colonial, and going to metal poles. There was something I was reading about with the bases. Are you guys burying the bases and not going to have that little bit of concrete stick up as well? Is that accurate?
Right. So they would be direct burial. And yeah, we did decide to go with the cutoff colonial to give a bit more of a residential community look. We thought the shoebox was a bit more like a commercial parking lot look.
Okay. Staff, is there any affected parties on this one?
Yes, we do have an affected party. That will be James and Robert, asking them to know.
I've requested James unmute.
Okay, well, you got Robert, so I'll go ahead. Thanks, everybody, and I'll try to get this in within 3 minutes. We had a board meeting regarding this on October 10th. At that board meeting, James and I offered to donate the cost to also light the front and rear entrance signs and add power to those entrance signs to maybe put up holiday lights and also to the playground. Unfortunately, that request was ignored and sadly didn't make it into this application. One of the things that also is a concern is that the president identified that that there are only 1 shared electrical panel with the neighboring cluster Country Walk. There are actually 2. It was an unfortunate incident 40 years ago when Ryan built these 2 associations. They cross-connected to the electrical panels. There's nothing in in the application that talks about, I would say, cutting the umbilical cord between us and Country Walk. This will have a big impact on them. As a matter of fact, some of our lights, that the wooden poles that removed, there's still energized electricity in some of those poles that are currently posing a danger. Was it a little in fairness to the stakeholders here in Purple Sage, we've been notified again via meetings of this process, but not able to provide a lot of input. And I would contrast this with the neighboring HOA, Birchfield Woods, where their streetlight project was very similar. They allowed their entire homeowner membership to vote and provide input on proposals in the contract. They have since installed really nice streetlights that has a great color pattern and color temperature, and 15-foot anchored poles, all based on a well-written proposal and contract, which was kind of missing here in Purple Sage. So I would like to see, my issue is with the appearance of the straight fiberglass poles. Are not metal, they're fiberglass composite poles being directly buried. They look awfully commercial and very plain. I contrast that with the colonial style lighting that's over in Country Walk, the adjoining cluster that has more of a decorative base that covers the anchor bolts. These look rather plain, and if you walk around and you see other neighborhoods, these have tendency to lean pretty significantly without being anchored, being anchored bolts. We also have a new board. We finally have a 5-member board, which is a great thing here in Purple Sage. I don't think the new board members have really had much of an opportunity to review the proposal. This should have been done at a single purpose special meeting. Instead, it was crammed into a very long meeting that already had a packed agenda. And there's kind of this false sense of urgency to get things going here when we've been without streetlights for years. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Any other affected parties, Steph?
Yes, there is one more affected party for this application. Bear with me. Jim, I'm asking you to unmute now. Please let me know when you're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Your time starts now, sir.
Okay, thanks, everybody. I would also like to say that we've had 2 photometric studies done in the past couple years, and we haven't really understood what they are and why we're paying for these things and what the study actually accomplishes us. But we do know that it's disappointing that they're adding a bunch of lights around the playground, 2 lights right near the poo-poo bag thing station. And we have no lights along the trail or behind homes, where that's where people end up breaking in. That's where we have to get our trash cans and recycle bins in and out. So we need lighting. We need not more lighting around the playground and in those areas they propose, but more along the behind the homes and along the trail we have between Country Walk. It's a RA trail, and it's very dark back there, and people have to get their trash cans and recycles in and out and do other things. And if there's any kind of burglary, or it's just dark, and we would better off having those lights, some of those lights put behind our homes, and that none of that's, we haven't been allowed even to, we haven't met the any of the contractors. If you got a kitchen installed and you spent $10,000, $40,000 to remodel your kitchen, you would want to see the countertops, material. You would want to have choices. We have not seen any of the products. This is the cheapest light that you could get. It's if you see some of the others that Dominion offers, or some of the other contractors that have proposed before, you have a smorgasbord, and there's some classiness to it. There's some pride to it, and the board's concern was, well, Dominion if they break or they tip over or anything happens to them, they'll be replaced under this type of a deal. Where if we bought them outright and they broke, we would have to spend the money. So, but still, just because they ordered the cheap ones, because if they break, they'll be replaced for free. And we don't even know that. We don't even know the detailed contract with Dominion as to when do we own them? Do we ever own them? And how often will they replace them? And what if we needed to upgrade? Lastly, these things are lighting the sky. They say they're not, but they even have a back panel that if they're shining into a bedroom window or into an area, you can put a blank panel. If they're controllable, and I believe that goes back to the photometric study.
Sorry, Bob, that's time.
Well, could we also have you guys come out and do the same thing that you proposed and come out and survey the place? We've been here for 40 years and we would love to have you come out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else?
Not at this time.
Let me go around the room, see if there's any questions for the applicant. John, did you have any questions for them?
No, I guess, well, one comment is, regardless of the fixture, I appreciate the increase in lighting and all of that in the project. I think the concerns about the trail lighting would be a RA issue to be resolved and not a cluster issue, in my opinion. And those are the two principal things I have to say.
Okay. Mike?
Nothing for me, sir. All good.
Elena?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Jim? Jim? Brian?
No comments on the fixtures themselves. I do have concern, and I don't know if this is our purview or not, that maybe this doesn't have full cluster approval yet. So I do have a little bit of concern over that.
Would you like me to chime in on that part, Brian?
Sure.
So just so the DRB is aware, the cluster board is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the cluster. And so while they have performed and met the obligations to submit the DRB in terms of cluster-wide notification, and since it's amongst the cluster is not a requirement of the DRB to review the application.
Okay. Any other questions, Brian?
No.
All right. Jim, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I did have one comment. It seems like this style light fixture is going to throw light outward around rather than throwing the light down, or all the light is the light mounted up in the top part of the fixture, and there's no. I mean, it seems like we're trying to get light focused downward. Is that what happens here with this type of fixture, like the shoebox fixtures that have been proposed in other clusters?
Yeah, my understanding is that this light is, if you look at this, you can see the LED array up there in the top there. It basically shoots down and out, the sides. I don't think this thing even has any glass on it. I think it's strictly, just
Decorative.
open metal, basically. Is the applicant
the picture that's up on the screen right now? I mean, that looks like it has some kind of glass in it.
Well, yeah, and you're touching on a question that I had, because I couldn't tell whether it was going to have glass or not. Is the applicant?
Yeah, if I can add, So the picture you're looking at now is just the sample, the picture of the pole itself, not necessarily the fixture. The picture you were looking at earlier, that's the fixture, and yeah, there's no glass or any kind of material in there.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a what do they call it? A number 3 light or type 3 lighting pattern. So most of it goes down into the side.
So, Michael, if everyone remembers the ZMOD ordinance that came through a year or two ago relative to the lighting fixtures that were acceptable, that the Dominion was providing, this fixture is one of those fixtures. And so if the cluster is reliant on Dominion Energy to provide the style that is acceptable to Dominion Energy to source, then this is the fixture that is being they are very limited in the fixtures that they can choose from, essentially, because of the ZMOD ordinance.
Are all these poles are owned by Dominion?
They will be.
So they're currently not.
They were cluster owned.
Okay.
Under this plan, Dominion would own the poles and the fixtures, and then we would pay a monthly rate for them to provide power and maintain them.
Okay. And then are you guys, is it the 100 watt, 150 watt? Which one is it? That I couldn't tell. Or is it the 70 watt?
No, we were looking at the 14-foot pole and the 100-watt fixture.
100 watts. So it's got a 7,124 lumen. I think it's the one below that, staff. That's 3,000 Kelvin. Yeah. So it's 7,124 lumen per fixture. Okay. And you said at 14 feet, and your current poles are 15?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Emily, did you have any questions?
You just answered all of the questions that I had, or asked the same ones.
Okay. The only question I had is for the concrete situation. So, I mean, currently those piers probably go, I don't know, 2 feet deep into the ground. So those are going to be completely removed? Or are they just going to be removed 6 inches below the ground and then?
Dominion requires they be removed for the lights to be installed in place. And so then the 14-foot pole, it's 18 foot total, 4 feet in the ground.
Okay. So you guys are going to have to take out all those concrete pieces. Okay. Okay. Let me see if there's any, we'll go around, we'll do some comments, and then we'll take a vote. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
So my only initial comment is, and it kind of piggybacking off Jim's comment is, the original fixtures were shoebox, so they're kind of shooting light down and kind of out, whereas the new fixtures are kind of just shooting a halo almost. And so I'm wondering if all of the existing locations are. I was trying to look at the photometric to decide if they're all worth it, because then they're adding more. So it's like we're increasing the amount of lumens substantially. These are kind of the old sodium fixtures, it looks like. I'm not saying it doesn't necessarily need it, but I'm just trying to make sure that just because there was an existing one before, it may not be in the prime spot based on the photometrics. So I was kind of looking at that, and it seems there's a couple of them that are impacting, there's maybe 2-3 of them that are impacting a couple buildings that I feel like may, cause complaints, and they're going to probably be able to need to put up some of those. Like that number 17 one, that's a new one. I guess there must be a dark spot there that they're trying to alleviate. That one, because if you go to the photometric, it basically is half over that house there that's on the left. So I was only having a couple heartburn over a couple of these new ones based on the photometric. I don't know if anyone else was looking at them. Aesthetically, I think the light is, we're kind of at mercy of Dominion if they're trying to get those paid for by them. It's not totally atrocious. I think it does work better with the style of the architecture that's there. Sometimes it is what it is. If they, I do agree that fixture looks better than the shoebox for this neighborhood, in my opinion. I think it works better with the architecture. Did anyone else have any other comments that they wanted to bring up?
Yeah, the one location that's directly under, I guess, number 30 and across from number 4, that just seems really crowded right there.
Yeah, and they're adding 31. So if you go to the photometric staff on slide 14, you can kind of see where Jim's, yeah, that little triangle of light. I mean, it's kind of just, you know, that intersection there is basically being lit up essentially.
Well, a lot of walkways there and stuff, so I could see that.
I guess what's tricky is, and what I want to make sure when we approve this number of quantity more lights, like these lights are going to substantially be better than your current lights. And so that's where we hesitate to approve a lot more than what you have, because, you know, the current fixtures are probably only putting off, if I had to guess, 2,500 lumen. And so each of these fixtures is going to be 3 times that. So that's where I hesitate sometimes when, you know, when it's a 1-for-1 replacement, it's usually straightforward and easy enough. When there's multiple, when it's, you know, a new technology, it's going to be brighter. It's going to be, you know, the color temperature is one thing, but the lumens is the other. And that's where I'm kind of really looking at this one. So that's just kind of my comment. Anybody else have anything?
What was the total number of additional, Michael?
I think they were adding, was it 11 or 9? I think they were going from 24 to 33 or something like that, I think.
Okay.
I think they're adding 8 new lights.
8 new lights, okay.
Can we go back to the photometric? It's interesting that corner that's crowded, there are other areas, like North is up to the north of the site, that are equally crowded. It seems to be around intersections.
Well, yeah, and I think that's that playground space. You kind of
Yeah.
see the
I
dirt,
just-
the dirt mulch area. Yeah, it is. It's basically where the 3 roads all come together. They're kind of, you know, putting a light on each pole, you know, a pole on each corner.
Is there any ability to put a blank panel in those fixtures if someone does complain about glare? To throw the
Yeah.
light only in one direction?
Yeah, I believe there is. Staff, can you guys unmute the applicant?
The answer is yes. We have several clusters that have used that fixture as a requirement and have
That's what I thought.
added. Yep.
Yeah.
So if I can jump in, my understanding that this one does not offer those panels.
Oh.
I can double check that with Dominion. But they do offer a different Colonial that has the panels inside that you can put a black panel on one side, or, you know, however many sides you need. But because this one doesn't have panels built in, my understanding that's not an option. And then I did want to clarify that the photometric study you're looking at is not actually current. We had been looking at a plan from PSE that this Dominion proposal is replacing. So the photometric study you have is from the PSE plan. Dominion doesn't offer photometric studies, so we were expecting to have to get a photometric study to move forward, but we just haven't had the time to get that yet.
Well, I think that was a good expectation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be beneficial to look at these fixtures and make sure that there's a couple locations that we think there's probably a little overload of these new lights, mainly at a couple of those intersections. Not saying we can't have any new lights. I just, you know, we've had a couple clusters in the past where they instituted new lights and then realized how bright a new light is compared to these old lights that you guys haven't even had lights working for, you know, who knows how many years. So it feels very, very dark. and as soon as we add these new lights, there's really no going back. It's not like you can just shut them off, once they go in. So what I would say is I'm going to make a motion to defer it to allow the applicant to provide a photometric study for the new Dominion fixture and verify that all of the new placements are required. Yeah.
I'll second that if you'll entertain an amendment that I encourage the applicant to consider a fixture that would allow a retrofitting for glare if necessary. Now, I know that might be and this is an aside, not part of the motion. I know that might be a financial consideration, but I think it is something they should consider.
Okay.
I'm not going to make it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I accept it. I figured they could accept the panel. So I think just verifying that this one can. Cam thinks it can, the applicant thinks it can't. So I think it's worth clarifying and recommending that we do want those. Cam, did you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure the DRB put a timeline for returning since poles have already been removed.
Okay. Let's do. Aaron, do you think you guys can get a photometric done by, I don't know, in 60 days? Is that?
I honestly don't know. But I spoke to our community manager after October 10th meeting and asked them to start getting bids for such a study. So hopefully I can follow up with her, see where she's at on that, and then we'll move it along as fast as we can.
And sometimes ways we've seen it done as well, it's not the most official way, but the manufacturer or Dominion in this instance should be able to give you an overall, since you have a fixture that's pretty much just shooting out a circle, they should be able to give you, okay, if it's 15 feet, the diameter of the, a kind of a foot candle how should I hit, like halo going out, that then you guys could even graphically just put that on a plan that shows, okay, these are going to cast light out 15 feet diameter, just as an example. And then you guys can show that to scale kind of on a overall site plan. It doesn't need to be a, full blown, cost you guys a lot of money sort of plan. If you can get some fixture information, like very similar to this, you almost could use this, but then alter it. If you guys come back and say, this is the exact same photometric array that these things output, and then we'll kind of go from here. I do think there's a little bit, a little too much light clustered around that playground and that island area. But, just take that into foot is I think you guys do kind of have a photometric already done. You just kind of need to update that circle is really all you need to do. Because if you zoom in, these actually show the little bit of it's kind of hard to see on this, but it does kind of have their little points, which is where they're measuring the amount of foot candle in that specific area. So hopefully you'll be able to find that. But there's a motion on the table. There was an amendment. Do I hear a second? Oh, and then there was an amendment to the timeline for 60 days.
Yeah, I was seconding it with that amendment.
So there was a second from Elena. Is there any other further discussion or suggestions? All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Aaron.
All right, thank you.
All right, going back to 2214 Wake Robin Lane.
And I'm asking her to unmute now. She dialed. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, yay.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is if you could maybe turn off the sound on your computer because you're echoing.
Well, I had my phone and my laptop going at the same time.
Okay.
I'm on
It sounds good
DCC
now.
Drive
Yep.
for work, so
It sounds better now.
I had to take off all the security parameters. All right.
All right, so if you could walk us through your project, and then staff drives, but you can, explain what's going on. Take it away.
Roger that. Okay, so the landscaping plan included a deck that was built to the square footage stipulated in the plans provided to Reston Association and 3 adjacent neighbors. Contrary to the affected parties' statements, there have been no deviations in the stipulated measurements or square footage. The new deck is no higher than the old deck that was there here when I purchased the home in 2015. And the floor level is to code, and the deck is well within, obviously, the setback lines. I provided images of the deck this morning, and RA took pictures this afternoon as well. The flooring is the chocolate as stipulated. It's the what's it, Syntax material. The ratings are the black aluminum as stipulated, the stair lights are as stipulated, and R2 code. The plan also included full landscaping in the back. As you know, 3 oak trees were removed in the backyard. And as you know, I could not replace them with deciduous trees per the recommendations of our certified arborist. He stated, and this was provided to you in June 29, 2022, that the yard is fully covered, no more available light for smaller trees. More trees would need to be removed to make room for light and space. Planting excess trees would be too close to the structure. Trees with potential to grow large would grow with heavy lean over the house. So deciduous trees were not an option. It would take me right back to where I was with the roofing problems. I hired both Merrifield Garden Center and Meadows Farms to provide landscaping designs. Both organizations agreed with the arborist, and both organizations recommended Green Giants. I did provide them with the list of native tree recommendations from Reston, but both Merrifield and Meadows Farms stated that screening trees, as deciduous trees are not recommended, those ones that are on your list would not survive or thrive in full shade. So as a result, both Merrifield and Meadows Farms recommended Green Giants. They provide the screening that the affected party would like, and they're also not on the invasive list. So the backyard has been landscaped by Merrifield, which is surprisingly cheaper than Meadows Farms, by the way. I planted, I did deviate from the plan a little bit by adding an additional Green Giant. So the original plan had 4 Green Giants. I planted 5. There are also 5 Astibli, 3 Jasmine Plum Yew, 3 Lustrum Waxleaf, 3 Fern Fortune Holly, and then there's some Pachysandra ground cover. So that should be all correct except for the additional Green Giant to make it 5. One other deviation was there's no grass patch in the middle of the yard. As recommended by Merrifield, they said there just was not enough sunlight. So the full backyard is mulched and is with black mulch, identical to the front of the yard. Stated earlier, pictures were provided this morning. Reston took their own pictures this afternoon. And that is my basic summary of the plan.
Okay. Is there an affected party on this stuff, I believe?
Yes, we have 2 affected parties.
I only received affected party from one person.
We didn't have an updated affected party statement. Mr. Abbott had his original affected party. So once an affected party, always an affected party.
Roger that.
Unmuting Mr. Abbott first. Please let me know when you're unmuted, sir.
I only have, we stand by our past effective party statement, so I won't reiterate it here. But I think someone earlier this evening made a comment about the flagrant violation of the guidelines, and that's exactly what's happened here. There are trees that were cut down without permission. Once gone, they can't be replaced. The board needs to deal with that aspect of it, because as you know, your counselor has always reminded you of the fact that if that happens, it weakens the guidelines overall, and eventually, if this continues, they'll become meaningless. I don't have any suggestions on what you should do about that, but this is really a flagrant disregard with respect to the tree removals of the DRB guidelines. And that's all I have to say.
Can I add something?
Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Hi, this is Stephanie Abbott. I'll get in the frame, but just a couple of things that, first of all, the deck is huge. It's very large for the space. The Lisa mentioned that she got approval from adjacent neighbors. No adjacent neighbors signed off on it. There were people across the street that have no visual impact from what's happened. They don't see that yard. We do. And the trees that were planted are maybe 5 foot tall. They will provide no screening. They will never come up to, well, I can't say that, I'm not an arborist. They probably won't reach the height of the deck in the next 10 years. And additionally, some manufactured screening was put up along the decking on what would be, I'll say, the second level of the house, both facing the path, facing the immediate neighbor, and facing the back, facing the pathway. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Our second affected party is Richard, and we are asking him to unmute now.
Richard, let me know when you're unmuted.
Yeah, I think I am.
Your time starts now, sir.
Okay, I'll read through this as quickly as I can. 5 large trees were removed from the 2214 rear yard. The DRB required a landscape plan to be submitted. The landscape plan was submitted and reviewed on July 11th. This plan included minimal landscaping and the plans for a new deck across the 2014 house rear. The DRB deferred the decision, asking the applicant to submit a new landscape plan that would include replacement trees of a native species and adequate caliper to preserve the woodland feel. I think what you're looking at tonight is exactly what was shown to you on July 11th. As part of the submitted landscape plan, the 2214 deck was deferred as well. Unapproved construction of the 2214 deck began on August 17th. My deck floor is 8 feet above the grade. Due to the contours of the yard, the 2214 deck floor is 5 to 6 feet above my deck floor. 2214's original deck set in 8 feet from the house side. The new deck starts flush to the side wall. In an attempt to provide screening, I planted 3 20-foot tall red maples, a native species, recommended by Meadow Farms. They think it's a perfect environment for these trees, so I'm not sure where it's coming from that they wouldn't grow. In mid-September, the 2214 deck neared completion with trim and iron railings in place. The 2214 deck was then dismantled, columns, decking, railing removed. A new row of columns and structure was installed that extended the 2214 deck an additional 3 feet. The extension and the elevated floor of the 2214 deck make my new screening inadequate. The floor level of the 2214 deck looms over mine and visually invades my privacy. The new unapproved 2214 deck is now complete. I was asked by 2214 to move my new trees further back from the tight property line, which I did. Yesterday, 2214's rear yard was landscaped exactly like the July 11th plan, with the exception of changing arborvitae to 8-foot tall Leyland cypress, non-native, and assorted bushes. One 8-foot Leyland cypress was installed across from my 20-foot red maples. It will take roughly 5 years for this Leyland to reach the floor level of my deck. Given the elevation of this unapproved 2214 deck, this is not adequate for screening. The entire rear yard, now devoid of any understory, has been black mulched side to side. In summary, the applicant needs to provide tall screening of the new 2214 deck along my property line. The 5 large trees removed need to be replaced on a 1-to-1 ratio to reforest the site. Angle braces installed on the deck don't meet the DRB guidelines, a 24-inch maximum drop. The deck design and size is a DRB issue. Any decisions, I'm almost done. Any decision should be considered as an original application, as if no construction had occurred. Asking for forgiveness instead of approval is a constant concern for the DRB.
Pardon me, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you. So staff, sorry, are there any other affected parties?
No, no other affected parties.
Okay, so I'm trying to wrap my head around what we're approving. Because I was going through the decision letters. There's been from what I saw, there was a decision letter that the trees were approved to be removed, but that a landscaping plan for a 1-for-1 replacement was required within 60 days of that approval. Was that ever provided?
Not within the 60 days.
Okay, but how did we, I guess I'm confused. How did we approve something without having what was going back first? Normally we would require that plan.
The trees were removed before it came to the panel, if I remember.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay. So the trees were already gone. So then we required 4 trees to be submitted, 2-inch caliper, similar species, or ones that would do well in the environment, right? Okay. Then when did we see the deck application? Was the deck already built at this point as well?
The deck wasn't built at this point. The deck was in the submission of the landscaping plan. So there were 2 items. There was a deck and there was a landscaping plan, and it was included, but it was deferred. Both were deferred.
So has the deck ever been approved?
No, it has not.
Oh, okay. Now I'm understanding what's happening. Okay. All right. So for the applicant, did you understand that the deck wasn't approved when you built it? Is the applicant on still?
She is still on.
Yes, it wasn't allowing myself to unmute myself. No, I did not. I understood that I could submit the plan as one, and that's why I submitted the plan and thought that as long as it was in line, it would be fine. But then I realized once I submitted that I had to, go through the entire process, contrary to what my neighbor Stephanie said. My neighbor to the left, I guess if your back is to the home, did approve the deck as well.
Yeah,
in addition,
they may have signed your application, but the deck was not approved. So the DRB never approved this deck, these deck plans, from what staff was just telling me.
okay.
It was not approved.
What are we in? Are we in an appeal? Are we in a still need to make a decision? I'm just still, all this letter says is deferred decision on the landscaping plan, but doesn't reference a deck.
So the landscaping, within the landscaping plan was a deck. And all of
if I could interject,
yeah,
the landscape plan and the landscape issue was an isolated issue. The owner submitted and was wanting to do the deck project at the same time that this tree issue came about. And so she moved forward with the deck simultaneously with the landscape issues because she couldn't build the deck without having addressed the landscape issues.
That's
so
correct.
That's how the deck came into play. So the deck has never been reviewed by the DRB in terms of getting a approval or disapproval. It came into play when the homeowner knew that she was going to do some projects related to the deck, and the tree issues were going to be a problem if she didn't move forward with it at the same time.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
I could not, they would not, the deck that I previously had was one, not even permitted. I didn't even know this, and not to code and falling apart. So I had to replace that. They would not do the landscaping without the deck going in first. So that's why, as Cam mentioned, thank you, Cam. That is why I submitted them simultaneously. There's a lot of falsities going on here. The trees that I did plant, the green giants, are actually 8 or 10 foot trees. My land, I live on a hill, Richard does not. And I would naturally be above him because I'm on such a large hill. And the deck is exactly the same height as the previous deck. It has not been enhanced. It couldn't be enhanced because how would you walk out of the door?
Right, but okay, yeah, but I was just trying to lay a foundation for everybody on the board to understand that because I did not understand that the deck had not been approved. My understanding was it had already been approved and that we were just looking at the trees that had not been submitted that were adequate according to what we had. So now that I know we're reviewing a full deck application as well, even though it happens to be existing, I understand now where we're starting. So let me go around. Let me see if anyone has any questions for you, and then we'll have some discussion. John, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Mike, do you have any questions?
Negative. Thank you.
Elena?
No. Thanks.
Jim?
No, thank you.
Brian?
You intend to leave the deck untreated, or are you going to stain it? There's a bit of railing behind your screen porch that I think is stained. Is the intent you're going to stain it to match, or is it going to remain untreated?
So the full deck is composite. If you're referring to the screened-in porch, is that what you're referring
I'm referring to, no, sorry, the structure like this, the wood structure posts and things like that underneath this white fascia board.
Oh, I did not have an intention to stain those. I didn't stain my fence railing. I feel they were natural and they didn't need to be stained.
No, that's fine. I think there's a small portion of railing behind your at your screen porch level that I think is. That's what I was asking. And I mean, you've answered the question. I was just trying to understand.
Oh, okay. No. I mean, the screened-in porch, the railings on it will be replaced to match the new railings, the aluminum black railings, though, and the screen will be replaced as well. So it will look very consistent. The fascia will be changed as well. I never noticed that those poles were stained. But that's an easy fix.
And then I don't know if I have any other questions. I think just noticing the obviously the entire site being mulched. And I mean, I did see like several of the new trees. I understand they're not full growth because they're new. But I thought I thought they seemed appropriate. The spacing seemed appropriate. Yes, it is going to take time for them to grow. I do agree there. But I just want to, I think there were a lot of these like kind of mulched like areas around the tree. And this is probably better for Emily. Maybe it's a question for Emily, but a lot of them was kind of like mounded up around the tree. And I want to make sure that I'm not sure if that's appropriate or not, just so that the tree can be healthy. I may have to ask Emily if that's true or not. But I noticed that quite a bit walking through the site today. I just want to make sure that maybe that's repaired if it's not the right way for it to grow. So,
I wouldn't know about the mulch height, or it could have been a squirrel or my dog or my child.
Well, no, it's pretty consistent since it's so much mulch. Okay. I just wanted to maybe bring it up. So Emily, what do you think?
Yeah, in general, you want to have the crown, the root flare of the base of the trees able to breathe. That's actually where they get a lot of their oxygen. So if there is more, then usually we recommend only like 1.5 inches to 2 inches of mulch. And when you get new mulch put down, you're actually supposed to remove the old mulch rather than just piling it, because you can suffocate the root system. Did that answer your question, Ryan?
Did. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, there was no existing mulch underneath. Peat moss was put, I think, around some of the bases or what have you, whatever. I defer to Merrifield. That's their area of expertise, and I think I think, was it Mary or your level of expertise, but assume they planted the trees accordingly, but I can verify.
And I guess my only other more comment, and maybe have to do with these diagonal braces underneath the deck. They just gosh, I don't know the right word. They just don't. They look a little wimpy, and I'm worried. I don't know if they're doing enough. I think typically the DRB discourages the use of the knee braces, so those are kind of a concern.
The braces are what is now required to code, actually.
Negative. That's not a clear statement. That's not the case. There are ways to skin this cat without knee braces.
Yeah, it's the easy button with the county.
Oh, it's the easy button. I can easily call.
It's the easier way to do it. You can do moment connections. You can do different ways. It's essentially helping with the shear of the deck, and there's different ways to do it depending on what's happening.
Well, I can make a phone call and have that fixed.
I think the big thing is by code and by what we recommend, the knee braces should be no less than 2 feet below the beam, essentially, is what the county details say, and kind of what we try to mimic in our guidelines if they are required. There are ways around them. I think on a deck of this size, it is the reason why we have issues with them is because they start getting very messy with the amount of them. So that's kind of,
yeah, that's good to know. So 2 feet below the beam. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, who was it was Brian asking questions? Do you have any other questions, Brian?
I'm done. Thank you.
Jim, did I skip you? Did you have questions?
No, one of my questions about the wood rail was already answered. That was all I had.
Okay. Emily, did you have any questions?
No questions as of yet. I will wait for comment later.
Okay. The only question I have is the plan, and I can't tell from the pictures that were submitted. The plan shows that the deck that's toward, I believe it is the affected party Richard's house, was supposed to step down 1 step. Does that in fact happen on the plane of the deck that's there?
No, it does not step down. That is not what we had initially intended.
Steph, if you go to slide 27, it shows, at least in this plan that I was given, slide 27, Steph. Yeah, that one. It says there was going to be 1 step down. And I think the intent with that, it's nice because it would have stepped that side down because of where the grade is going. I think it would lessen the impact. Is there a reason why that wasn't followed?
Not if you were here when my fiance was yelling at the people. It was not what we intended. It was to mimic the inside of the house, which has a step down as well, which is about what is it? Inside the house, I want to say it's it's a 8-foot step down to be standard. It didn't happen. So, that's.
Just clarifying what documents we have versus what was actually.
Right. I tried to erase that moment from my mind. So thank you for correcting me on that.
Okay.
Michael, there's also some site lighting on the back of the deck assembly. I didn't see any details in here with regard to the light in question.
Yeah, so is that 3? It looks like it's like a 3-head light. Is that motion sensor? Is that on all the time?
No, they are not on all the time. They're motion censored cameras, which were approved by Reston earlier. They're just moved out further, obviously, from where they were before.
So that particular light fixture was approved by Reston previously?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
then when I submitted application for it, it was approved.
but it was approved when it was mounted to the old deck, is what you're saying though?
Yes, I just remounted it.
Gotcha. Okay. So Mike, it was approved on the old
Got
deck. Okay. Let's do some further discussion. We'll come back to you if you have any questions. All right, Lisa, thank you.
That's fine.
I just have one question I wanted to ask Emily. Do you think in a shade environment, everything I've always been told, they're saying that no deciduous plant can be planted. I mean, couldn't something like a redbud or a dogwood be planted in shade?
Understory trees will do just fine growing beneath other canopies. That's kind of how they are meant to be. It's why they're called understory trees to begin with. So I do think that that was something that maybe she got fed. But yeah, you can absolutely put in redbud, serviceberries, dogwoods, any of the lovely native understory trees that we like to put in here that will do just fine in the shade. Ironically, those green giant arborvitaes are not going to do well in this fully wooded environment. They love full sun and tons of water. And I am baffled as to why they said, don't put understory trees that thrive in this environment and do put in green giant arborvitaes that want to be along the side of a road in a field. I am frankly baffled by it. But yes, we could absolutely add in understory canopy trees in here and they would do just fine, assuming they are given proper care and water.
Well, and also, I mean, and I think the arborist that she had actually recommended to replace it with hollies. I'm trying to find the statement on what page it was on.
I think that was from the affected party.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yes. Which
Go to slide 7.
Like a Nellie Stevens holly or something like that.
Exactly, because those will, if we're looking at an evergreen privacy screening in order to alleviate some of those concerns, an American holly will do much better in an understory environment than some other things. Now, I'm not saying that the green giants aren't going to live. They're just not going to thrive. And I would recommend that, more at the very least, more trees could be planted in that space. It's still a lot of mulch. And we're not saying put more, massive oaks or poplars that are going to be a danger to your house, but smaller canopy trees to help screen and kind of refill in the wooded environment. I actually live very nearby here and I walk by this house all the time. So I have seen the construction ongoing and what was there before and what's here after. And I can definitely think that they could infill it quite a bit. And that they might want to, because they do back up to one of the trails and they've lost quite a bit of privacy themselves. The other thing that I just wanted to call to everyone's attention is part of a reason I think that this has become an issue for the neighbors is the elevations of these plans only show, a deck that's going to be 8 foot 6 inches above grade, but the elevation from long fence doesn't take into account the fact that the yard slopes off at almost a 45-degree angle here. So the back posts of this deck are almost 16 feet in the air. Just looking at the photos, I don't have an actual measurement, but the finished floor of that deck, the yard just slopes off so much. So that's, I think, part of the problem was that these drawings aren't showing the grade change and where this, I'm surprised that they probably had to put more steps in just to account for the fall as they were going along. But yeah, so long story short, yes, we can put more understory trees in here and I do recommend it.
Anybody else have any other comments or thoughts? I know, Lena, you said you were saving something.
Pardon me?
I thought for some reason, I thought you maybe said you had a comment early on when I was asking if you had any questions.
No, you were confusing me with Emily. She said that.
I was just trying to read your mind.
Thank you.
Anybody else? So aesthetically, I think the deck, it is larger in the pictures than it is on the drawing. Like that's a great example of the sheer height of this thing. I think that issue was compounded with the fact that the old deck only stuck out 8 feet, and this thing comes out 15 feet. It still does meet the guidelines though of single family detached decks that are kind of recommended to go no farther than 16 feet. So it also does have angled corners that kind of meet the guidelines as well to kind of help lessen the impact of a square deck kind of sticking out. So it has a couple. I do wish that they had stepped that right-hand side down like the plan had suggested. I think that 8 inches actually would have made a big impact on that right-hand side there. Aesthetically, Brian, were you thinking that it'd be best to have the structure be stained to match the screen porch structure?
Not necessarily. I think I actually prefer the new deck, the kind of the unstained.
Okay.
Just because that this kind of red-ish look is a little bit foreign. So at least the unstained portion, I feel like it blends a little bit better.
Okay.
Would like to see it all match though, the different materials. So
Yeah, it's going to be tricky with the wood already stained on the one. Okay. The other thing I would say is that, the railing situation is a little unique. Usually we have wood railings or they'd be a composite railing. I don't mind the two-tone effect. I think it works. I think the screens are a little distracting. So the only thing I would say, the screening is a little bit not consistent with the overall design.
are those permanent or is that just furniture?
Oh, I don't know. It may, I guess you're right. It could just be a freestanding thing. I don't really.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have any rules about if they just have temporary furniture sitting out on the deck.
They're temporary furniture.
Okay.
And the screens, they're going to be replaced and the railings on the deck as well to match the new railing, the black aluminum. That will start next week, I think it is. And the fascia board on the side, all of this will be replaced to match the new deck.
There's no, Michael, just a question here. Maybe I missed it again, but any commentary with regard to the roofing, colors, materials, et cetera, associated with this enclosed structure?
Well, I think the enclosed structure is existing from my understanding.
That is correct.
Correct.
Yeah. So she's I guess saying she's going to update a couple of the things to make it more consistent with the deck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we did say that the old deck wasn't permitted. Was the old screened-in porch permitted and approved at any point?
I assume.
It's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, anybody want to take a stab at a motion?
Well, I have one more question. Do we have a precedent in Reston for these, pure black aluminum railings?
We have wrought iron as a pretty good standard, which these are kind of the new equivalent.
I think there's a precedent directly across the trail from them. The neighbor directly across the trail has the black vertical pickets. I think they have the white railings, but the black vertical pickets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to the railing. Just, I mean, a lot of the original houses in Reston had black wrought iron, and this is kind of the newer version of it. It has a little bit thicker, railing and newel posts, or whatever you want to call them, support posts. But overall, I think aesthetically it works with the deck and the house color. I think if the house was a different color, it may be a little bit off-putting, but I think aesthetically, I think it's fine. I think overall, the height of it, I wish it was to step down just on that one side. I think that would have helped. But you could also argue that it's a nice consistent fascia board that goes all the way across. So, I'm trying to look at this, would I approve it the way that it was designed before it was built, right? And that's what I think we just need to make sure to look at it that way. So I think the trees are one issue, and then the deck is obviously a second issue. So,
Well, I'll take a stab. Well, I don't know if I want to make an emotion to approve. I'd actually maybe like to defer until we can have a detail one about the cross bracing and how we would like to have this better thought out, because I'm in agreement with Brian that I think the cross bracing is cluttered and distracting underneath and kind of visually obtrusive, as well as I would like to see a landscaping plan that helps to obscure this deck both from the neighbors and from the trail, from the RA property, because it's a very open property. I'm also just sort of concerned about all of the mulch eventually washing away, because again, it's very hilly, and one rainstorm and most of this stuff is going to be in the concrete ditch that's right behind this house that leads down to the lake. So I definitely think that we need to see more landscaping that helps stabilize the soil here. And I don't want to say a drainage plan, but a couple of the photos, there's open downspouts, and I'm just concerned about erosion on a property this open that has taken out a lot of the mulch, or a lot of the planting in the area to help absorb water. So that being said, I'd like to make a motion to defer the approval of this application until we have a deck details, landscape drainage, landscaping plan, and a drainage plan that would adequately screen this from the neighboring properties and the RA trail.
do we have a motion? Do we have any comment? Or
I do have a comment. Just to answer your question, Emily, the screened-in porch was approved. It was a deck and it was approved as a conversion to a screened-in porch. And also, would you put a timeline?
I would put a timeline of 60 days.
so the only thing I would amend that to be is I do think that we could get a little bit more native understory tree plantings. And so I would still go back to requiring the 1-for-1 replacement of the 4 trees that were removed with native, flowering deciduous trees such as, understory. If that, yes, a brand new, oak tree may not succeed, but a understory redbud or understory dogwood, I think would succeed. And Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe those are considered deciduous trees as well.
They absolutely are. And yes, I accept your amendment to my motion.
And I would recommend placement of those, on the sides of the property and at the rear to kind of minimize the height impact of this deck design on the neighboring properties accordingly. So, and having your plan here is perfect that you have now on slide 24, just provide kind of where these other actual deciduous trees would kind of go.
I do have a question, a clarifying question. So this would be additional trees to the 5 that she's already planted, is that correct?
Well, to me, those 5 that are planted do not meet the 2-inch caliper deciduous tree that we requested. So, so to me, it's just to keep following through with what we already required. And is it 4 or 5? Because what I saw in the we approved 4 remove.
Correct. She, I was asking because,
Oh, she added the extra tree,
Added
right?
extra
You're
tree.
you're right. Yep. Yeah, so it would only be 4 would be the requirement still for the deciduous.
and that's for on the side where the affected party is.
All whatever's, yeah, the sides to help minimize the height impact. So I would say you need some on the left-hand side and the right-hand side to be, you know, cohesive with it. Elena, do you have a comment?
Yeah, you did say flowering. It's not necessarily flowering, correct? It's just deciduous native.
Deciduous understory.
Yeah, I know that means flowering, but I just wanted to be more
Well,
clear.
yeah, I mean, I think it would help. It just helps with the tree cover or the leaf coverage or canopy, whatever it's called, the proper term.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I actually think, you know, I would be okay with even, you know, they have like the holly trees that are natural to our wooded areas that are a little bit more, you know, spindly. They're not like the Nellie Stevens. I don't know what the right term is, Emily, but like,
Those are just our straight American hollies, no varietal. Nellie Stevens is a cultivar of them. So they are volunteers from the birds, which is great. But
so
they
there's
are
no really
they're-
way to plant them is what you're saying. So
you can get
scratch
a
that.
straight American holly species, but it's harder.
Okay, scratch that then. I'll stick with the understory deciduous trees.
Oh, yeah, I did plant hollies before and they're not doing very well in my front yard. Those are the ones to which you are referring. I'm sorry about the deciduous trees, but it's just not an option for my home. Ever since I bought this house in 2015, I've had water leaks and I could not understand why. I replaced the windows, I replaced the siding, I replaced the gutters. Finally, after talking to the structural engineer that actually built the home, Reggie Marston from HGTV, formerly from HGTV, all came out and tried to, with a roofing company, to figure out why I was getting water leaks. It was the roof. The trees were dropping these gigantic branches on my roof and putting holes in my roof. I am not risking that again.
We're not recommending any tree that's going to get taller than your house.
No.
A redbud and a dogwood are not going to grow any more than 15 feet. It's going to be about the same height as your deck.
And where do you recommend that I plant those? Because Richard planted 3 trees on my property to the left. He has since removed those after we talked about his encroachment issue. He has since moved those over today. Where do you recommend that I plant these deciduous trees on this property that doesn't have a whole lot of space in the back?
Yeah, I would recommend if you go to slide on the supplemental application photos, slide 19, where there's kind of piled up wood. So scroll down. I think, you know, this area here in your yard where there's just piled up old wood here, I think this could potentially be a good spot for trees. It may even be outside the fence line. You may even put it towards, you know, your front yard here. I don't know where the person is taking the photo, but you know, you might have room there as well. I think ultimately the trees are to add back to the tree canopy that was on the site previously. So would it be great that they screen the deck? Sure. But if they also just add back to the natural area that you're in is also an adequate placement. Yes, I don't agree. Yeah, I don't want you to put 2 red buds within 3 feet of each other. I completely agree with that. You know, they need proper spacing so they can grow and spread out. But they will be understory, which means, you know, they're not going to get much more than 15 feet tall. And it's going to take a little while for them to even do that, but it'll actually be an improvement to your yard. They do beautiful flowers, you know, red buds, dogwoods, they all are native species and are beautiful trees. So I think you'll be actually happier than with the green giants, which, you know, is kind of a nature's, or not a garden center's, you know, I don't know how to describe it, but it's not the best pick from the litter. Let's put it that way.
And I think on the other side of the deck too, where you're saying kind of
Yeah,
closer
the
to
other
the
side
house,
would work as
on the
well.
other side by the trail might help. Kind of closer to the house because some of the green giants are more kind of down the way along the edge. So maybe filling in just at the corner, close to the house on the trail side, I think would also be a good complement. Help
so
screen.
slide-
Even
like
straight
slide 8.
ahead, and sorry, Michael, even like straight ahead in this photo, just past the gate post on the left, you could fit in an understory tree quite happily in there that would help, you know, screen it from the trail and as well as the neighboring properties. So I think, I mean, easily we're able to say there's, you know, 3 different locations at a minimum where we can fit in trees just, you know, in these 2 photos. And that's not talking about the rest of the property. As Michael was saying, we have an option to screen from perhaps where this camera is taking a photo from, which would still help screen the deck.
Yeah, and slide 8 staff.
Dogwood would look really nice in that picture.
Yeah. And here, slide 8, I think there's, you know, a great amount of room there where the mulch all is just that, you know, we might be able to get something to grow kind of on that. I think that's where Brian was referencing. This here area is the other side that I think would be you know, a feasible location.
Yeah, I think it would really benefit the homeowner too, because that's right by the trail and by the street. So a lot of traffic there.
All right, so there's a motion, there's a second, there was some further discussion. There was some more further discussion, there were some recommendations. Hopefully staff tracked it all. Let's take a vote. All those in favor of, just a reminder, it's a deferral with needing some more information on the tree locations, and the deck knee braces, kind of investigating, just making sure that they are installed per Fairfax County code, but then also no more than that 2 feet below the beam structure, and seeing if there's any other alternatives that exist out there. All those in favor say aye.
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 Again, any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 7-0. All right, I believe we have LaShonda or Cam, I don't know, going to present some guideline revisions / additions /
Yes, I'm gonna make this hopefully painless as possible. So I'm coming back with some additional revisions. We had some that were approved in January, some that were approved in June. So I'm coming back with a couple more. So for revisions for decorative lighting, this would be for clusters and single family. If you can go to page 7. I believe
decorative lighting. Are you tackling string lights, LaShonda?
I'm tackling string lights. I understand that the DRB wanted a design guideline for string lights. So we had a couple of applications here recently where I was able to find some criteria to add, specifically like locations, that the location doesn't extend beyond the property lines into neighboring properties. I touched on lumen levels and color temperatures, you know, just ensuring that the string lights were ensuring that the string lights did not exceed 1500 lumen, the maximal allowed brightness level by Fairfax County. I believe that's what it is. And also using like a warm temperature to create like a cozy, inviting atmosphere, or aesthetically pleasing, whichever verbiage you would like to use. I touched on the types of fixtures, using like a dark sky compliant fixture that directed light downwards, that didn't do a lot of like outward light spillage. And then I talked about the timer and dimming controls that will assist with some of those other, I guess, what did they say? The install timers and dimmers to control when the string lights are being illuminated to help reduce unnecessary light during the late hours. So that was for single families and clusters that I just wanted to know if anyone had any comments or if you want to be added.
I guess my question is, the way that I'm reading this, and I do not mind it, is that what we're writing for these string lights should apply to landscaping lights and deck lights as well. Because this is part of the reason that we're getting into so many of these neighborly disputes, is people arguing about, you know, a carriage light that's blinding them in their windows. And if we're going to write it about the string lights, why would we not also do it for other exterior lights in terms of, I mean, anyone else have any thoughts on that?
You also want to talk about the locations of where these can go, like landscaping versus like on a balcony or a elevated deck, like we just saw in this other application.
Like a maximum height for the string lights?
Well,
Yeah,
I
like
don't know.
above grade, or like, you know, where they could be located. A lot of people are putting them out in the landscaping, but if somebody decides to put them up on the deck and their deck is, you know, significantly up above grade.
We have some in our cluster that are on decks and nobody has complained. They look kind of nice, you know. So I'd hate to, I don't know how you put subjective parameters around it, but I'd hate to say that you couldn't put them on decks. We have people, you know, now that string lights are popular, they lace them through their railings is the way they put them on their decks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Michael, are we at all concerned about the language directing light downward to minimize upward light spill? I mean, a lot of these string lights are just bare exposed bulbs, right?
When we were doing research, we saw that some of the lighting fixtures for the string lights, they can have some type of shield that would direct the light downward. And I don't know if the DRB would want to have that as an enforceable requirement. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what's tricky is I think there's a two, like the shield is great at night because then it puts all the light downwards, but during the day when the lights are just hanging, then all you see is the shield and it's kind of not the most attractive thing.
Yeah.
You know, the glass bulbs will typically disappear if they're on a white, you know, a white or a black wire, they're usually going to disappear. But then once you put the shield on them, they then no longer disappear. I think it's a good first stab. I think
it's sorry, I was going to say, I think it's a really hard topic. So yes, thank you for the first step.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we should address. I do think height is going to be, I think it should be a concern. And it's not to say that they can't be mounted to decks, but I've started to see more and more where people will, I mean, I don't know how they do it, but they climb 25 feet in a tree and hang them all around their yard. And it's, I mean, don't get me wrong, it looks cozy and inviting, but it's bright. And so I think if we have a rule, you know, if we're able to put a guideline on the fact that they need to be mounted no higher than, you know, let's say 12 feet from the adjoining floor level, or you know, something whether 12 feet, 11 feet, 10 feet, I don't know what the right number is, from the adjacent floor surface that they are lighting, floor or ground surface that they're lighting, you know, then I think we could limit some of these other installs that have gone a little bit overkill when they're going, halfway up a tree that's 50 feet tall.
So what are you saying, Michael? You don't want any Clark Griswold lighting displays going
No.
on?
Listen, you come to my house on Christmas, I got good lights.
So can I suggest that we say that we have parameters that are fixed for does not require a panel review, but if all these parameters aren't met, it requires panel review, because I can see exceptions to just about every one of those rules based on where the house is located and how it impacts the neighbors.
And I think the string lights location sentence needs to be updated and revised a little bit, because I'm not sure it's saying enough yet. And I wonder if this whole discussion if this could include something about how, like, minimizing the light spillage over to an adjoining property or something like that. Because that's what we saw in a recent case. Because then it's not specifying a certain height or whatever, but I don't know, would
And
that
perfectly
apply to
honest,
more cases?
if someone's got 5 acres and they want to hang string lights 25 feet up in the middle of their own property, I do not give a flying hoot, as long as it's not bothering their neighbors and you're not able to see it from the road. So when we talked about implementing a foot candles or at the property line, like that it shouldn't have a certain level of brightness at the property line, and we could say at 10 p.m. or whatever the case may be. And then because I honestly think that if we put in the caveat of the light shouldn't extend beyond your property or cause undue glare, which we could quantify in doing like a foot candle study, and we say you need to turn your dang lights off at a reasonable hour or have them on, because saying you can have them on a timer, I could have my timer go off for 30 minutes and on for 30 minutes every single hour. It would, it would be annoying, but you can absolutely do it. So I would almost say it would be more beneficial to say, like, just like we have noise ordinances, having, it's unreasonable to have these things on when they're not actively being used is like the normal quantifier. So like if you're having a party and you're up until 11, like one Saturday, and you write your neighbors a nice note beforehand, maybe they're not going to mind. But if you leave them on till 3 a.m. every single night and they're blinding into your neighbor's bedroom window, that's when people are going to have a problem with it. So I think if we tackle appropriate time and appropriate amount of spillage off onto other properties, the rest of this stuff will become less of an issue. Sorry, this is my soapbox and I like it.
Do you have like a time that you would like to have implemented?
I don't think we're allowed to specify a time.
So if I could add into that, the DRB needs to be fully aware that when you set the guideline, you need to be prepared to be able to enforce it. And so be mindful of the stipulations that you're putting in, because members are going to have that expectation that staff is fully able to enforce, and we're not out at midnight. So just food for thought.
Well, I think that's something where if their neighbors are complaining, you could have a time-stamped photo that shows, hey, I took this at 2 a.m. and their lights are still on, or they can make a complaint with Fairfax County as well. Like there is a way to get documentation that isn't, you guys having to go out and do a light study at midnight.
Yeah, to your point, Emily, I think one of the things that I really latched onto was a foot candles part of what you were saying at the last meeting. And, I think mimicking Fairfax County is always helpful, but I will say that 1500 lumens is not necessarily what the standard for Reston should be. So I think as you all think about, like, maybe the light at this review level should be lower, and then anything beyond that should be something that requires a higher level of review, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And the issue with lights is that, they're not a problem until someone makes them a problem. And so, it's very rarely that somebody's going to think that they need to go get their string lights approved from Reston Association, right? I mean, I would be begged to guess that there's probably over 500 properties currently to this date that have string lights, if not more. I wouldn't doubt it. And so what type of guideline would this be? To me, these lights should always be seen as like a temporary install, whether they are or not. I know people will keep them up year round. I understand that. But I think that to cover us, to me, don't you think it'd be better to have it be a temporary guideline, kind of like how there's temporary shade structures for umbrellas and things like that to that nature? We don't, like you said, Cam, it's only a rule, a guideline is only as well as we can enforce it. And to me, we only are going to need to enforce this in the very rare circumstances when people complain. That's ultimately when it's going to come to us. And so if it's a temporary installation, like isn't all, and correct me if I'm wrong, but are our umbrellas and shade structures, things like that, aren't those considered temporary seasonal items?
That is correct. So we have shade structures, and we have a time frame from which they can be erected and when they need to be taken down.
So like, could we somewhat do that? I mean, I don't know if it's a good idea or not. I'm just throwing it out there, like to help cover us where it's, I mean, most people, and I mean, well, I guess I could be wrong. Never mind. I was going to say most people in the winter aren't going to be. One thing that came up with I'm thinking of the case that we had a couple of weeks ago. The big thing was they were lighting their yard when they weren't using it. And the big thing we were trying to do was like, well, when it's occupied, you can have the lights on. It makes sense, right? It's your yard. As long as you're adhering to the 1500 lumens and the color temperature, to me, it's not, we shouldn't say one way or the other on whether you can, have it. But it's when you're not using your yard and it's causing issues on your neighbors is when I feel like I wish there was a way we could just strictly, and I think maybe a motion sensor with a timer, we're encouraging that. I like that language. It's kind of open-ended. Whether the person uses the timer or not, we don't know. But I think that could help control it. And maybe that would just say install, have a motion sensor and a timer, or has a daylight, how like Christmas lights have where you can have them on 4 hours from dusk, 8 hours from dusk. It's like a standard, switch on the plug, something to that effect. So I don't know what that officially is called, whether that's a time, I guess that's a timer. I don't know what you guys think, but I don't think there's going to be a way to have a good guideline to control everything. We just need to be able to, enforce it once somebody complains, essentially.
To add to the comment about the shade structure, so we put like a size and a proportion for the temporary shade structures to have like a no application required. So we gave a removal time frame, and it was approved a size and a proportion. So temporary shade structures may not exceed 10 feet by 10 feet. No application is required.
Can I make a suggestion in terms of tying it to something that is actually can be followed up on? And so I'm hearing a lot of like height and location. So for example, if it's on the deck, then it's this. If it's 8 feet above the walking surface, it's this. If it's 15 feet above, your rear yard, and it's within 10 feet of a neighboring property, it's this. I think that might be a little bit more helpful in terms of kind of controlling the scope and the real concern, which is the illumination beyond the property line. And then, of course, the visual impact that it has in terms of looking at it. So if someone has it wrapped around the railing of their deck, is it really the same impact as someone who has a pergola that is 10 feet above the walking surface that has all the way around and is within, 10 feet, the deck is within 10 feet of a property line. I think that might be something a little bit more tangible for us to kind of pilfer through and decide whether or not that impact is extreme or not. And I think that's the goal of what you all may be looking at.
Yeah, it's a lot of like nuances. So it's a lot of it's okay. If you put them on your ground in your backyard, they need to be max, minimum 25 feet from all property lines. And if they're 5 feet, if they're less than 10 feet in the air, then they can be 15 feet from the property line or something to that effect. I also think 1500 lumens is necessarily really hard for the normal person to know what the heck that means. I almost say, like, if you have more than 30 lights, 30 bulbs, they need to be approved by RA technically. That way somebody could just put one string up and it doesn't need approval. But if you put up more than 30 bulbs, I'm just picking a number out. Or if there's more than 30 feet of continuous light or something like that. Because to me, lumens, I think it's good to have it in there, but ultimately when someone looks at this and I'm going to go buy string lights, I'll be like, okay, great. I meet everything that they have. And then, I put up 600 lights. I don't know what 1500 lumens is. I have no idea.
I like the continuous length of light idea. I'm nervous about the 25 feet from your property line, considering I live in a townhouse cluster and that would mean we couldn't do it. And
no, that was only for if it was like an open backyard. Like if you have a cluster with, let's say you have privacy fences on each side and you want to hang on the privacy fence and they hang below the height of the privacy fence along it, then to me, those are adequately screening it. But if you're going to hang it, you're going to put a 12-foot pole up in the corner of your yard and you're going to hang them at 12 feet on your neighbor's property line, to me, that shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah. But we have people, not me, I don't have them. But we have one house that has them strung from like above their front door to a tree out in their yard and back to a front balcony. Very simple string. I'm sure it's less than 30 feet in all. And it's very minimal light. Looks nice. Nobody cares. I wouldn't want it to, there's another house down the way that has them strung in their tree. It's in the front yard, but it's not going to be 25 feet from their property line because their house is only 25 feet wide. So.
Yeah, no, and that's where I'm like,
yeah,
I think if it's less than 30 feet of lighting, or let's say it's 40 feet.
I like that. Yeah.
Come up with a number that as long as it's less than 40 feet, 50 feet, whatever we want to come up with, you don't need an application. You can put it anywhere you want, blah, 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 kind of like what people are already doing now. But if you have more than that, then it needs to be, approved. And more than likely, most people are not going to get it approved, but it would only be there in case there was a complaint that came up.
But I think we could combine them, like I said, the instances I'm talking about in my neighborhood, very low light levels come out. And I believe there's a variety. I know from the application that we've reviewed, there were different settings and a variety of light levels. So I think we might want to combine that with a maximum bulb output or something like that. I don't know what it is, but
the thing that I really like about doing like the foot candles and the light measured at the property line is that you can download an app on your phone that will measure the light levels. Like it's very easy to monitor or look at and just do a quick hey, it's 6 o'clock, let's drive by and make sure that this if we get a complaint, I'm saying to Cam's point that we need to be able to enforce this, that we're not going to have to get a photometric study that the lights are too bright or that it meets a certain amount of lumens. But I do like the idea of saying if it's below 50 linear feet of lighting that, or, Actually, we might want to make it a bulb count because you could do in that 50 feet, you could have 50 bulbs or you could have
Yeah.
25. And that's
That's a
gonna
good
have,
point.
it's gonna have different, depending on the bulbs. It might be smart to do a bulb count as opposed to a linear footage, just for the string lights, because they do come with different spacings, and I can see someone trying to work around that annoyingly. But yeah, I sent to LaShonda, I would recommend that we do some research, because even in just a quick old Google, we are not the first area that's had to struggle with this. And there's probably some precedents out there that we can look through, use as an example, pick and choose what we like from it, and apply it to the guidelines. So we're not, recreating the wheel.
And thank you for that, Emily. I do have that. I can send it to the whole board if they wanted to, or we can just incorporate some of the existing language that you just sent and send it
Yeah.
out.
I thought it was helpful. I didn't want to put it in the full chat, because to be distracting, but yeah, it's just an HOA that I found that had wording that is basically trying, hitting on what we're trying to tackle here.
Yeah. And maybe we say anything over, 30 feet or 30 bulbs requires an application as an example.
Yeah, that's a good catch-all.
And the only reason why I suggest that is just, even if, let's say you had a 60 feet of wire and it starts getting a little, now we have to worry about, okay, what does the wire look like? Because aesthetically, we also need to worry about these. It's not just at night, it's during the day as well. And so the more wire that's on the property, the more unesthetically pleasing it's going to look overall. So LaShonda, do you think you have enough feedback there that we can try to
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
work
Absolutely.
around a new update? I think it also would help to have a section that's like, it says, so this one, it says, these guidelines are all reviewed by staff, but maybe there's one section for string lights that doesn't require an application at all. If you're staying under the length and bulb total while still adhering to the lumen. I mean, the lumen to me is still 1500 lumens is still a lot for bulbs. I do think obviously it's the foot candle as well with the light spillage, but 1500 lumens is a lot, So I don't know if would we rather say per bulb, the maximum is, 10 lumens per bulb or something to that effect. I don't know if there's an easy way to really track that. That's, I don't know. So anyways, just if what Emily sent has a little bit more information, I think maybe we can, like she said, not rewrite the book.
Okay. All righty. If we are ready to move on, I can go on to artwork. This was a update on page 12. Go to page 12.
Would you like us to go through each one, or did the DRB have questions that they'd like to spend more time on potentially?
Well, we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, just 4 of the updates that are across single family and clusters that are the same. So. Did anybody have any questions, or did you want me to just continue with the remainder?
I would say continue if we're
Okay.
taking a vote.
Okay, so for artwork, the update was made for single family and clusters. The no application level was added for stipulating a maximum diameter, which would be 4 feet with like restrictive properties. They can't have sound and it can't have lighting. And also put a quantity of how many would be allowed on the property, which would be 3. And just added a comment
Should
for
you put a height limit on there too? You have diameter. I'm just wondering what.
it just is like removable artwork. I just said 4 feet 4 feet the diameter, but we can definitely add a requirement for height if anybody had any recommendations.
Brian, were you thinking like a maximum dimension in any like in any direction kind of thing, as opposed to?
I was just
diameter?
thinking the 4 feet diameter is pretty large. I could see, I mean, if somebody really wanted to test, they could put, you know, a huge 12-foot column or something. I don't know, something in their front yard. That's
A wacky waving inflatable arm and tube man.
right. So I don't know.
That's not artwork, guys.
Feel like it could help.
And I did say, you
I
know,
mean-
it has to be removable. So something that can easily be taken off, you know, like, you know, temporary art display or anything like that, tapestries.
I mean, right now, are we sure we want to have any artwork that's allowed to have a no application? I mean, what if I just want to print out a giant emoji that's 4 foot diameter? I can stick it in my house, you're telling me? With no recourse? I can just put it up? I mean,
If it doesn't
I
have-
personally think we shouldn't have any artwork that can go on anybody's. Like, to me, that's opening up a big issue. Because right now you have to have an approval for all artwork right now.
Yeah, and the issue that was coming up, some of the resale coordinators were going out and they were having to cite something that was like a temporary fixture, like up on a balcony or something like that. So, I mean,
The
maybe.
person's moving, aren't they taking it with them? I mean, why would it be staying?
Exactly. That's the reason why they thought that it would be a good idea to add, because this is something that's affixed to a wall or something like that. I
So
understand.
I think the larger part of for us is kind of a customer service standpoint, Michael. It's not necessarily that one is better than the other. It's just simply we get so much flack as staff for having to have your neighbor sign, 3 of your neighbors sign an application to put up a star because you're from Texas on the side of your house.
Well, I wouldn't approve that.
I guess why would the star ever get flagged unless the person's moving and they would take down the star?
So let's say we were doing a walkthrough, right? And a cluster specifically asked for it. We walk through the cluster, we do our inspection, we would have to cite it because it's a design violation. Same thing with resale, same thing if it were a complaint. And those things are often
Then they would just have
problematic.
to put an application to come to the DRB. Once again, it's if somebody complains. I'm just thinking worst case, what if I put up you could put up anything egregious in a 4 foot diameter and you could just put it up there and it'd be approved.
Maybe
is my
the size could be reduced, but to add to Cam's statement, just from a customer standpoint, if someone is going through a POA and they're looking to get this, quickly resolved,
Take it down. I mean, I don't know. And then if the next person wants it back up, they can put it back up. I mean,
I don't disagree with you that there's potential for any type of design guideline to have some sort of abuse with it. And clearly we could establish additional parameters in the no application section of this to kind of give that avoidance of anything that is too gauche, for example. But I do think that for us, it would be helpful to have some sort of ability to negate that 3 signature application type of thing, because it is a pain point that members experience. And that while you see it as a simplistic, okay, you could just submit an application or you could remove it, for us, it's having to explain why they need an application. And then, of course, them submitting it and then having it reviewed. It is a little bit of a problem. So if there's a balance there, we'd like to kind of delve into that balance, maybe come back with some suggestions in terms of parameters that are more detailed instead of just leaving it as a size and quantity kind of limitation.
yeah, because I mean, to me, I just think, let's think, I know we have a sign guideline, but could somebody argue that a sign is a piece of artwork? Could they paint a beautiful political sign that's a 4 foot, diameter and then mount it on their house? I think there has to be some sort of review level, even if it's just staff. If it comes up, I know you still need an application for a staff approval. But maybe it needs to be, 18-inch diameter and you can have one, but anything over that, you need to have an application. I just think 4 feet with 3 of them, it's just way too much. I mean, that to me, that's way over like the signage guidelines for Fairfax County. And to me, artwork is really just signs.
I have a just clarifying question. Does this count if somebody wants to put like one of those metal whirly gig like sculptures in their front garden? Like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How many flamingos are we allowed to have? These are the questions, people.
Is that considered artwork?
That would be.
We can argue it.
Landscaping, in the landscaping design guideline, like small structures, like little things like that.
Gotcha. But we're talking about like if someone wants to have a 6-foot statue of David in their front yard, they need to have an approval, which, can't say I blame you for that desire. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't getting so nitty gritty about.
So Michael, maybe we could think about visibility from the street. If it's not visible from the street, it doesn't require an application.
That's kind of tricky in clusters. What's a street? I mean, half the houses, like from a sidewalk, maybe.
Yeah,
From
something
a public
like
side, maybe from a public walkway or street could be a good, like if it's in your backyard and only you can see it, then maybe there's a different guideline. But I'm just trying to like, what have you guys ran into? So you said stars from Texas. What else have you run into that people have put up that is
mainly this happens, I haven't seen it so much in single family homes, but I've been given some citations from condominiums where these things are affixed to the balcony or the wall within the balcony. So those are some of the examples that have been provided to me.
and they probably look bad. I mean, I'm just being honest, and there's a reason why we don't want them to be approved. So
it wasn't necessarily because they looked bad. It was just that staff, they needed to, submit an application for staff review. And we were hoping that this, again, to help the customer to better serve the member for something that maybe a smaller diameter or a smaller dimension wouldn't require, or, a lesser quantity wouldn't require an application at all.
I guess so not to beat a dead horse, I would say, look at our small sign guideline that you're allowed to have for a political sign, a temporary political sign in your yard. That I think it's 18 by 24, I want to say, or it's something like that. I think that could be the maximum size, and you could have one. Okay. I mean, that's just with no application, and anything over that should have an application.
Got it.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how anyone else, if you guys agree with that, but I think it's a very rare circumstance, and I understand you're just trying to, speed up some POA issues, but I also don't want to open a can of worms that we can't put back.
I remember reading something with some like retaining walls that when things go for sale, that they must be put back. Could we just preemptively say like all exterior artwork must be removed prior to sale, or something like that? It just to avoid, like, get ahead of it and say, get it off the wall before you put the house on the market, guys. Like, don't come at us later. If we just make it known that they need to remove exterior artwork before the house sells. Just a thought.
Not a bad suggestion, actually, in terms of removing temporary artwork unless you submit an application upon resale. That actually is. Are you sure you don't want to work in covenants, Emily?
I know, and I'm pretty sure I bought my townhouse, like they had some weird like wrought iron, I don't even know what it was. It was a clock of some sort, I think, that was like sitting on the outside wall. Like, that's like considered artwork? That stuff that's like it's like a sun, like a metal sun that's like mounted to brick. Yeah. So I think if we keep it below that 18 by 24, no application, and maybe it's one per face of house, right? So you can have one on each, because I didn't know, like, even my townhouse that I used to have had they had a temperature gauge, decorative temperature gauge that was mounted to the brick. And when I bought the house, it was there and I just left it because it told me the temperature. I don't know if that's artwork, but I think,
We could get into a deep philosophical conversation about what qualifies as artwork.
So,
Lawyers
right.
and
So-
people have tried.
So maybe 18 inch by 24 inch on each face of the home.
Okay,
Does that help you, staff? Do you think that helps a lot of the potential issues you guys may run into?
it's very helpful.
Okay. All right, sorry. Next.
All right, next, page, where are we going? Page 14, trellis and arbors. So this requirement under no application review level for a freestanding, something that's not affixed to the built-in deck structure. Again, staff have run into situations where they have these things that are not built in, like one that we just saw on the deck application previously here tonight that are cited. So like for trellises or arbors that are not physically connected or built in, they shouldn't require approval.
The only thing I would say is I think there should be a general size. I mean, you could argue a trellis, like you could have one that's 6 feet by 6 feet, I mean, I don't know, when does it become a pergola versus a trellis, I guess is my question.
That is a good question.
So I would say, no more than like 2 feet in width or something, then it may, or 3 feet in width. Like where it says small trellis up there, if you're installing a small, less than 3 by 5 feet trellis, it has trellis right up there. Boom.
Okay.
I would use that guide, that 3 by 5 feet, I think is good for arbors as well. Because people could argue, when these big freestanding pergolas that exist these days, that you can just put in your backyard nowadays, that you just buy, at Home Depot. You could end up with a big, 15 by 15 by 10 foot tall structure, and someone argue that it's a trellis because there's a plant growing on it.
Okay.
So
Well, wouldn't that go towards a temporary structure? If it's not, wouldn't that follow the same guidelines as a temporary structure? If we had like a shade tent, to me, if it's just a freestanding thing. It would
no,
follow
because
the same
those things are like
guidelines.
anchored into the ground. They're not just freestanding like a tent.
Well, if it's built into the ground, then that's something, a pergola that you'd actually need an application for. If it's just a freestanding piece of furniture, it would follow the same rules as an umbrella.
Yeah. But I don't think that's what this is talking about. We have another guideline for those. That's a different temporary shade structure guideline. This is strictly for trellises and arbors.
Yes. Okay. The next one, if we go to page 19, for small structures, we've added a con level. Let me see, page 19. Added a staff and consultation level for little free libraries. We've seen a couple of those come across the DRB, and just provided the location requirements, size, and the design.
I didn't understand on the location why you specified non-residential, because I see a lot of people put them, kind of in their front yards or whatever, on a side, near a sidewalk or near a trail. Am I misreading it?
So what I mean, like non-residential, so most applications for the little free libraries are not for an individual home. It's for like a school or a church or a community. If non-residential is confusing, that's what I meant by that.
Oh, and I guess we're under recreational and RA property.
Yeah,
Maybe
this
it's
is
different
specifically.
for, okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, this
Is there one
specifically
for
commercial
single family
properties.
homes or for residential homes for the little free libraries?
No, so this only addresses the recreation and RA properties and condo and apartment common areas, because normally that's where we get the request from.
So then if if a single family residential homeowner's putting up a little free library, they basically don't put in an application.
I did not add that to any single family or residential properties.
We've never had a single family submit an application for a library to be on their property. We've only had them be submitted by a single family homeowner that wants to install it on RA common area.
We have 3 people in our neighborhood that have little free
Yes, they don't
libraries on their
exist.
property.
Really?
We have-
They don't have
we have-
approval for it.
We have one on our cluster common area, and I wouldn't look for it under recreational and RA property.
I think this
It
is to
should be
help.
in cluster common area, but
Yeah, like on our
to-
panel meeting, we had a bunch of condos or apartments. I think they were apartment buildings, wanted to add little free libraries as an amenity. And the only thing that I would say that the reason why we denied them was because they brought in these, roto molded composite plastic structures that look like, they belonged in a kid's,
yeah,
toy room. And we basically said it needs to, and I think the design guideline maybe just say it needs to be, I think the key is that it should just be it should be made out of wood and mounted to a wood post. Kind of like our signs require to have a 4x4
Yeah.
a wood post. I think that will rule out a lot of the manufactured plastic options and require you to have a more aesthetically pleasing option. I'm okay also if it's a little over 4 feet. I mean, most of them are, I think, higher than 4 feet. Is that what you guys are seeing? About 4 feet is what the standard height is?
Yes.
Because I almost would say like the post would not exceed 4 feet, but
yeah, you're right, because you
the
don't want
library itself could sit on top of the post. Because
yeah,
I
you
would
don't
say
want people
of them,
bending over.
I feel like a lot of them, they're more at my like chest height. So I feel like they're
Mhm.
over 4 feet. But I could be, I think if we bump that up to 5 feet, it wouldn't be, atrocious in my
I
opinion.
think the county has an ordinance for 4 feet for the post itself.
Yeah, and so maybe that's the clarification that we should just say
Yeah.
is that it's 4 feet for the post, and then total height should not exceed, I don't know, 5.5 feet or something. The kind of average height of a person.
Well, I guess my suggestion is, and I agree with everything Mike said, I think that we could take this language and just massage it to put it in the other standards, like for clusters and for single family homes. So we have a standard across all of the different locations that someone might put them.
Sure, I don't think that's a problem at all.
Okay. Moving on to landscaping. Did anyone have any additional comments or for the shelters and small structures? No. If we go to page 25 for landscaping, the only adjustment that was made here was the reference to timbers. Currently, we only allow square, and this is to add rounded because, again, we are seeing a lot of POAs that come in that will cite round, and we have a lot of round landscaping timbers that we would like to include as acceptable in the landscaping design guideline.
Do you mean round or rounded?
Round and square. It could
Okay,
be,
so they're round. They're not the rounded. I mean, they're rounded ones too, I've seen.
gotcha.
I think
So
it's
I
more
would-
round. I think it's more rounded because then
Yeah,
they.
'cause they have
stack
a flat
stack
top and
them.
bottom and the sides are just
Yeah,
rounded.
Okay.
Because no one wants to stack round things. It's not
yeah.
fun. Um,
So
Emily,
I
how
would just
tall can-
change that to rounded.
Emily, how tall can you build a rounded timber wall? Like, is 18 inches?
well.
It seems like that's a little tall for that type of
No,
wood.
No, you can
Maybe it's
build
okay.
them to 18 inches. You just need to reinforce them with like rebar on the backside,
Okay.
usually, to help, have this hold the soil up.
I mean, I don't have anything against them. I don't personally, I don't think they're aesthetically as nice as square, but I also, as long as they're not any higher than 18 inches, I don't think they're gonna make a big impact. They're gonna, what's that, like 4 or 5 stacked high probably. So, I think it's, I think that's fine. I just would make it clarify that it is rounded, not round.
Got it.
I have a question, and I'm sorry, but when we say made of natural stone, I mean, that can sort of cover all manner of sin, which I'm fine with, because if it's made out of a natural, if it's made out of natural materials, it's fine, at least in keeping with RA standards, because you're not going to go wrong with having, I'm just thinking of like the little rock borders and, sticking a flagstone up on its end, or doing something like CMU and putting stone veneer on the face. Are we calling that a planter? Because in some realms you do.
But all
That
those things you just said were natural stones.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Those. But if you did like a CMU wall and you faced it with natural stone, would that?
Yeah, that's fine then. Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, there's like a weird line between a retaining wall.
Yeah.
And a
All we're
planter.
trying to eliminate is like, those concrete fake, scalloped, concrete blocks that they sell.
Little tombstones that people love to put in their yards. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the big thing is just this is updating to include the rounded timbers that they sell to help people who stack a couple high on the weekend and then go to sell their townhouse, and staff has to get them to have an application because they're rounded. So am I correct in that assumption, Steph?
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you. And the next thing for signature requirements for clusters on all levels, if you go to page 13, as I was going through and doing updates, we noticed that, does somebody have a question? Oh, no, I thought I heard somebody. So we were going through updates and we noticed that the signature requirements weren't consistent through all of the design guidelines for clusters, which requires a board officer signature and 2 neighboring signatures. So that requirement for the signature per the rest and deed was updated for cluster design guidelines. Any questions about that? Okay. And then if we go to page 57, the general overview, the only update was to mimic the recent resolution updates, just changing the time frame for the appeal time frame from 10 days to 7 days. And then pages 59 through 21 are the additional condominium standards that mimic our clusters. And if you go to page 4, that'll give you a list of the additional condominium design guideline additions that are presented tonight. And
these are just copies of what we already have, basically. in clusters. They were just gonna put them in for condominiums, right?
That's correct. I mean, what's shown on the list, it incorporates all the revisions that the DRB has approved in prior meetings thus far.
Okay.
In addition, I'll update the ones that we had comments that the DRB had comments on tonight, like artwork, decorative lighting, landscaping, and plant structures, trellises, and so forth.
Well, I think it's good because a lot more developers are like, I know we had what was it, Tall Oaks, I think it was, or not Tall Oaks, Vantage Hill. They're
Mhm.
claiming to be a condominium. So, we need to have full guidelines that basically just mimic our cluster guidelines.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
That's it in a nutshell.
All right, good work. Thank you for
Awesome.
prepping those. So really the only one that needs a little tweaking is the light one. I think most of the other ones there's some minor things, but overall just the light one I think you're going to come back with a couple things. And then do we need to do a motion for these? Do you want?
Well, I would like to have a motion because my goal is to get this before a BOC review. And if I could update the lighting design guideline and send it to the board for a vote via email, along with any additional ones that we talked about tonight, if that is possible, I would like to do it that way and get approval to move forward.
Yeah, when's the next BOC meeting?
It's November the 6th.
So when would you need to have unanimous email approval by?
Let me see.
I can tell you.
Okay.
So the meeting's November 6th. You would need it by next Friday, technically.
Okay. So can you meet that timeline, LaShonda?
Yes, I can.
I think really the only one that's needs too much tweaking is the lighting. I think the rest of them were pretty straightforward, quick changes. I mean, I would be fine with saying, can we give you guys a motion to approve? Could we do a motion to approve all of those, but the lighting with the minor changes that we suggested with some of the, like the trellis size thing and some other, whatever the other one was, there was a couple minor comments, and then just have the lighting be the only one that goes to email for unanimous approval. If that
I'll be
makes
happy with that.
Yeah. So I'll make a motion to approve the suggested updated design guidelines and additions, minus the lighting decorative for string lights portion, which will be voted on at a later unanimous email concession. So I have a motion.
I'll second it.
All right, motion with second. And just to clarify, we do have some comments on the ones we're approving, but those are going to be integrated by staff. All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Any against? Sorry. Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. All right.
One last thing before you leave, DRB social, very easy.
Oh, I like to talk about that one. Okay, hold on. Yeah.
I have a couple of dates. Just wanted to see who's available so we can start planning that. So December 14th, December 18th, 19th, or November the 27th.
Oh my God, it's that
Whoa.
time of year again.
It is that time of year again. Yes.
Say the December ones again.
Can
Sorry.
you email those to me, LaShonda? I'm so sorry. If I look at my calendar right
Yeah.
now. I'm
Can we
gonna
do
cry.
like a Survey Monkey?
A Survey Monkey?
Do those still exist? Is that old? Am I old school
No,
saying
I
that?
know what a
Google
Survey
a
Monkey
Google
is.
survey or something? I
Yeah.
don't know.
We can do a Microsoft survey.
I don't care. Whatever you do, just that way we can rank them. Whatever 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we can take the consensus pick.
Okay, I can get that sent out. Yeah, start getting that planned for y'all. We had a lot of fun last time. I know Michael Bianchino wants to do karaoke. Remember?
Do it.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'll do it. I don't know that anybody else.
Did
I
Mike?
will.
Is Mike re-upped on the board? By the way.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Congrats, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Anyways, if you could send that out, we'll take a vote. Or, just send our favorites. We don't need a vote, but just whatever. That way we can start figuring it out sooner than later.
Okay, yeah, I'll send that email out before I leave. Or I mean, do you really want the survey or do you just want me to send an email out?
Whatever's easier for you.
An email sounds like plenty.
Survey Monkey is a classic. I don't even know if they exist anymore.
They do.
They do.
See? All right, cool. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Uh,